Everyone, and welcome to the Plymouth Select Board Tuesday, July 26th, 2022 meeting. Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we call the meeting to order, and the first order of business is public comment. Do we have anyone that would like to speak under public comment? Okay. Please state your name for the record.
Absolutely. Kevin Lynch, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 5, newly elected for a 2-year term. I don't know how long I have. Hopefully I won't take that long. But I wanted to provide a quick point of information. We all know that the Plymouth Charter Commission is meeting, and recently they posted a draft charter after, a question was raised as to where is the draft charter. And so I downloaded it. I only downloaded a little bit, but I would like to at least enter into the record, I hope, that these are some of the highlights I pointed out as part of being a town meeting veteran. They have the preamble, then they have the mission statement, and there's 4 parts to that mission statement. I'd like to just focus on statements 3 and 4. Number 3 is to promote direct and inclusive democracy for all the citizens of Plymouth and to encourage the participation of the citizens in the decision-making and governance of the town. That is quite an eye-opener, and I would love to be able to see how they're going to actually implement that. And number 4 mission statement is to provide long-range planning to assess the statuses of certain purposes above, and then to proactively provide for adaptations to continue to meet those goals. So they have a somewhat ambitious mission statement, and I hope they will be able to provide more information about that. Also found very intriguing is that a third non-mandatory town meeting shall be scheduled for January of the calendar year following the spring annual meeting, provided, however, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a third town meeting, and that's, by the way, that's section 2-4-1. Going to section 2-13-1, this was asked for a number of years ago, and they're finally putting it into the charter. There shall be a town meeting warrant article oversight committee to track the status of articles passed by town meeting. Because many times articles are passed and people don't know what would actually happen to it. So this will provide a nice oversight, history of it. There'll be 5 members, and the Committee of Precinct Chairs will appoint 3 of their members to this Article Oversight Committee, and the others shall come from Mr. Town Manager or designee, and the Town Clerk or designee. Quickly jumping down to the next section 2-13-4, this committee will provide 3 status reports, which I find very, very professional, and it's a long time in coming. The 3 reports will follow the first report 60 days following town meeting, so 2 months later. 180 days, 6 months later, the second report. 300 days, 10 months later, so the people can really see what is happening. So I really wanted to throw it out to camera that I think that the Plymouth Charter Commission is doing a very, very good job of providing a little bit more teeth to town meeting and the in-town governance. And 2-13-5, at least twice a year, the committee and the select board shall meet in a joint session to review the most recent committee report. I take it that's the reports I was referring to, and discuss any issues relating to its implementation. So I don't know, I would love to be able to hope that a lot of this is being communicated, but I have yet to actually hear about it or see it, so I'm hoping that you will perhaps indulge me in the future, come up with the second part of the Plymouth Charter Commission. So I thank you and appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak under public comment? Anyone online? No. Okay. Another order of business is our Energy Committee. Mr. Farah?
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Great. I'm wondering, can I share the screen, please?
Hold on a second. Can we turn?
Yeah, can we turn Patrick down?
That's Betty, then can we turn Betty down?
Yeah. We good? Try it again, Patrick, please.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Good evening. For the record, my name is Patrick Farah. I am one of the planning staff members as well as the energy officer for the town. And tonight, I'd like to talk to you, give you a quick update on our Plymouth Choice Power Supply program. And as a few of you may know, that we are now in our 5th year, our 2nd contract of purchasing a third-party electric supply for residents and small businesses. This passed town meeting a few years ago, and we've been very successful. So right now, the rate remains at 9.80 cents per kilowatt hour for our standard rate, and we have a 100% green option at 9.897 cents per kilowatt hour. And these rates are good until the end of the contract, which is actually expiring on October 1st of next year. I'd like to show you, and I know I've come before you before this a few months ago, but with the new rates, right now, basic service from Eversource is at 17.81 cents. So it has gone up from 15.7 cents the first 6 months of this year. And as you can see, Plymouth has these two rates right here, the standard rate as well as the 100% green renewable energy program. And if you take a look, these are all the competitive rates from other companies that are providing a third-party supply to the town of Plymouth. And you can see it starts from 18.7 and it just scrolls down. And you can see that we have by far the best rates in town. In the state, actually. So, what does that mean? Well, that means that in the first 6 months of 2022, and with the basic service rate from Eversource at 15.7, and we're at 9.8, the program saved residents and small businesses within the community just for the first 6 months of this year over $5 million. With the new rate at 17.8 cents per kilowatt hour, the anticipated savings for these the third and fourth quarter of the calendar year will be approaching $8 million, over $7.7 million. So the anticipated total savings just for this year alone will be creeping up to almost $13 million. And since October 2017 through the end of this year, the community will be saving over $23 million. So this has been a very successful program. Now, some of you in the audience might be saying, well, how can I get on this program? Well, this was an automatic opt-in. If you were on Eversource Basic Service, you were automatically opt-in. And how would you know? Well, take a look at your electric bill. And if you go to page 2, where I have circled in red, look under supplier. So you have 2 components of total charges for electricity. You see the supplier that's highlighted in yellow and delivery. Under supplier, if you see Dynegy - Plymouth AGG, that means you're already on the program. And you can tell by, if you look at the generation service charge and go to the right, you'll see 0.09807. So that's 9.807 cents per kilowatt hour. If you are not on this program, if you have a third party or you just moved into town, you may be still on basic service. You can call this number. This is Dynegy at 866-220-5696 to opt in, and or you can opt out because there may be some people that have well, other feelings about this. So there's the number if anyone needs it. Here it is. And I am available for any questions.
Does anybody of the board members have questions? I have a couple questions, Patrick. Thank you.
Sure.
That's a great savings to our residents. Now, is this a program that people can call in and be part of immediately? I was, actually, someone sent me an email that said that they tried to get into the town program, but they weren't allowed until October. So that's a little concerning to me because I don't think that's being, you know, published anywhere that there's a time frame or...
There is no time frame.
Okay.
There is no time. So what happens sometimes is if somebody has another third party, let's say Clear Choice or Direct Energy or something, what they have to do is they have to call that company and cancel their existing contract. Then they have to go back onto basic service. You can't go from third party to the town's program directly. What you have to do is go from a third party. If you have a third party, go to basic service, and that usually takes 1 to 2 meter reads or 1 to 2 months. And then you would call up that Dynegy number, and then they will put you on. I'm not sure who they called, but if anyone has any questions, they can call me directly at 508-322-3374. That's my direct line to my desk.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, hi, Patrick. Great job on that. I get a question for you. Is
Sure.
there a reason why somebody would not want to be on this? Are there better third-party rates out there?
No, actually, we have the best rates in the state. However, once in a great while, I do get a phone call of someone who wants to opt out because they don't want government controlling their electric bills.
So they don't want to save money?
They're happy to pay more money, yes.
Okay, good. Good for them. All right, thank you.
Derek, do you think that we could put like a direct link to this on the town website so we can drive our residents to there so they have all the information they need? And if there's any way that maybe we could link to Dynegy, that it would be an easier process for them?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We can work with Patrick and his team and Anthony to put together a PSA with the links connecting them to these resources. That's a fairly simple request.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions?
Betty, if I may,
Sure.
I actually spoke with Anthony The Energy Committee Chair, Holly States, actually drafted a PSA about a week or two ago, and Anthony was kind enough to put it on our town's webpage. It's actually on the front page when you first open up the website.
Great. So maybe we could post that and put it out there. Great. Thank you, Patrick.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, next up is DPW facility upgrade. Mr. Beater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Jonathan Beater, for the record, Director of Public Works. Very pleased to be here this evening to present to you our feasibility study, which is going to go into some detail about a new and renovated DPW building. But before I even get into that, I just want to kind of do some introductions. We have a little bit of a crowd here this evening. A couple months ago, back in really October, November, December time period, we went through a request for qualifications, and we selected a owner's project manager who is CHA Associates, and with us tonight is Joe Sullivan. Subsequent to that, we went through more of a designer services selection criteria when we selected Weston and Sampson, and with us this evening is Tony Westpizer from Weston and Sampson. Together, these two guys have a ton of experience when it comes to municipal buildings, especially when it comes to DPWs. They've done a number of DPWs throughout the state of New England. You know, we've been through a lot of space needs planning, phasing, and you'll see that in a second. I'm going to do a brief introduction and some PowerPoint slides, and I'm going to turn it over to Tony. But we also have Tom Fugazi and Dave Malaguti from the Building Committee, and Sheila Scazi, Assistant DPW Director, to answer any questions that kind of really go into some, you know, nuts and bolts of this presentation. But again, we have completely outgrown our facility. You know, working with the manager's office and the select board, we wanted to get here this evening just to kind of start talking about what we're looking at in terms of costs and what our ideas are to face this project, because it comes down to affordability over the next 10 years of how we're going to make this happen, and we're really going to do that with 3 phases. So with that, I'm going to really just jump into this presentation, and we'll go from there. So the agenda this evening is I'm going to talk about Public Works responsibilities, existing facility conditions, and then Tony's going to talk about work completed to date, and then I'll talk about benefits of a new facility, and then combined, all of us here this evening will answer questions. What are our Public Works responsibilities here in Plymouth? DPW touches the lives of all your residents every day, and we maintain our infrastructure that everybody relies on. And a lot of this presentation tonight, we know you're pressed for time. We're just kind of streamline, but you can see everything that we do. Plymouth DPW is one of the largest DPWs in the Commonwealth, given our size, 106 square miles, 37 miles of coast, 365 ponds, 400 miles of road. There's a lot that we do, and we're based out of this facility. It's very difficult to be effective when we're kind of falling over each other. We don't have the adequate, you know, facilities to work out of. Every day, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and as everybody knows, the frequency, the intensity of storms, I mean, we're out there every time. You know, we're planning, we're responding, and we are reacting. And reacting is difficult when your facilities aren't up to speed. That's a really big driver when it comes to this discussion and a future request for funding. Snow and ice, hurricanes, flooding, emergency road repairs, and just to support your other public safety departments. This is what we do. These are just some photos of some recent storms. Trees down, all throughout town, you know, Taylor Ave constantly getting washed out, Warren Ave, all of these things that we respond to, and we plan on responding, and it's happening more and more throughout the year. Public Works agencies are considered first responders, and it is our job to respond to any and all events that require us to do as such. And then you can see here, since the fall of 2009, Department of Homeland Security, we have been classified as first responders, so we are required to be there. Why does the town need a new DPW facility? We have outgrown our existing facilities. Our responsibilities are constantly increasing significantly over the years, and the facilities have not. The facilities just don't seem to meet our service needs, and they don't meet current codes, and our efficiency is being questioned. which negatively impacts our operations. These are just some photos in terms of inadequacies. And again, if everybody recalls, we have two buildings. Our building was acquired where our central offices are. We have DPW administration, fleet, and highway out of what used to be an MBO precast facility, which it used to be a Ryder truck facility. And next door to us, we have Parks, Forestry, and Water, which used to be an MBO facility. So this is where we're located, two buildings at the end of 159 Camelot Drive. These are some other photos. These are taken from the Ryder facility, where we just have highway storage. Again, you can see we're completely run out of room. This is just some outside photos of storage, tires, Connex boxes, equipment. Some interior photos of just some corrosion. Things are starting to deteriorate. If you remember, we did a significant amount of work at the MBO building back in 99, 2000. And already looking back, that was almost 3 years ago, and time goes by real quick. Interior photos at the Ryder facility. These are interior photos at the MBO facility where Parks, Forestry, and Water is located. This is our general layout. Looking at the site, if you're heading east, this is the two circles that would be northeast on a map. So those two oblong circles are the parking areas for DPW. So all of our vehicles are stored outside, and one of the biggest drivers for a new DPW building is corrosion and cold starts in terms of really impacting the longevity of equipment. And that's a lot of the background. We're not going to get into that detail this evening, but if you look at a lot of the DPWs, all of their equipment is stored inside to really extend and enhance the longevity of your equipment. Some more photos. Again, everything we own is outside. Sanders, trucks, everything. 365 days of the year. These are some other photos. This is where we keep all of our cones and barrels outside. This canopy has been replaced twice. I don't think we're going to do it again. It's just, Plymouth is windy. Just a summary of our deficiencies. The existing facilities are undersized to efficiently and safely support today's ops. Our existing buildings do not comply with today's building code. We have inadequate egress, they're not ADA accessible, and we do not meet energy code. Lockers, showers, toilet facilities are all under par, and we do not meet the plumbing code. The building in general does not meet all of the current mechanical codes. And we have a tremendous amount of operational efficiencies due to our space constraints, storage areas, employee facilities, material storage areas, undersized maintenance areas, inadequate file storage, and safety concerns for staff. So work completed to date. I'm going to turn it over to Tony, but in terms of, just want to back up for a second, the inadequacy of the building when it comes to sizes, we don't have office meeting space, we don't have proper shower facilities. A lot of times DPW employees are out, working a storm or an event for long durations, 20, 30, 40 hours. They don't have the appropriate break rooms. They don't have the appropriate restrooms. They don't have appropriate places to eat. Those are the main drivers behind this, where they need to be comfortable if we expect them to work those types of durations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tony. Thank you.
Thank you, JB. Can everybody hear me okay? So, as JB introduced me, my name is Tony Westpizer. I'm with Weston & Sampson, and we're the architects for the project. And the work that we've completed to date is mainly the feasibility study, and I'll provide an overview of the work that we've done. The first thing that we do in a feasibility study is try to get our handle on how much space the DPW needs in these facilities. So we conduct a space needs assessment, and that includes field visits where we go out and we observe the actual existing facility. We like to come out and see, and we do come out and see the operations working and all of the equipment. And we also come out and do a piece-by-piece inventory of all the equipment. Another thing that we do that we take some deliberate time on is staff interviews. We meet with every department, with staff from every department, and we did meet back in March, and JB joined us, and we went through with them, what are your responsibilities? What are the things that you're doing day by day operating out of this facility? What are the deficiencies in the existing facility that impact your operations? What are your daily workflow patterns? And we also touch on what would you like to see? What would be the optimum facility that would allow you to work in the most efficient way possible? So those are all things that we do early in the space needs assessment. And I mentioned that we do this with every department, and these are all of the functional departments with the existing DPW. I won't read through them all there. I will just highlight at the bottom there, vehicle maintenance is a very important component of these facilities to maintain that fleet. It's large, and a lot of maintenance is needed. And one thing that we have incorporated into the feasibility study so far is the consolidation of vehicle maintenance, including the fire department and the schools. So as far as the programming process goes, what we do is we prepare programming sketches for each space, and that's literally each individual space. Up in the upper left, you see that's what a typical office might be. Upper right is what a locker room layout might be, and we lay out every single space within the building and address coming out of those interviews, making sure that we've got spaces for everyone and space for all the equipment. We literally take that vehicle and equipment inventory and place pieces of equipment on that bottom right figure. We'll place pieces of equipment, all on paper, of course, but virtually using 3D modeling and fit that equipment and vehicles within to make sure we've got everything covered. So then we roll that all up and end up with total square footages for each individual functional area. And again, you can see those up there. I won't go through each line, but we roll that all up, and right now we're seeing that the facility needs about 123,000, just shy, square feet. Now, bear in mind that we do have an existing building that we do intend to reuse. The town is interested in reusing those, and we'll talk a little bit about that more later. So that the existing space is about 29,800 square feet. So those two buildings are shown in the picture with the red arrows. JB described them in his comments, and that would mean that we're looking at new construction on the order of 93,000 square feet. So now we move into concept development. Now that we have the square footages, we can start to lay out each functional area and lay out those individual areas together on the site and see how it all works out. So the first thing we do is look at the site constraints. We look at which existing structures are desired to remain or need to remain. We look at the zoning setbacks very closely, including what the lot coverage requirements are, and then obviously wetlands we'll look at and see how that might constrain where we're putting buildings or material storage areas and such. So for this project, we did multiple site concepts. We did that internally, whittled those down to 4 or 5, identifying advantages and disadvantages for each. We did meet with the DPW a number of times, and we have met initially with the building committee to review some of those initial comments. And coming out of those meetings with the DPW as well as the building committee, we took those comments and refined them into a final conceptual plan. I call that final. That's still pending review, a final review by the building committee. So JB will touch on this later. That's one thing as far as the next step is to meet with different town boards, including the building committee. So moving on here, this is how we lay it out on the site. So what's happening up there on the left-hand side of the screen are the individual functional areas of the proposed new facility to scale for square footages. And we start to lay them out. And the way we laid them out here is we took the office areas, the admin offices, engineering, and then the employee facilities, locker, showers, toilets, break rooms, and so forth. And those would be in the front of the site in this current concept. And this would also include renovation of a portion of the existing building where admin is now. The next thing we did was to look at renovating the existing vehicle maintenance areas And that's not enough. What you just saw fly in there was fire and school, so that might be housed in a renovated portion of the existing building. But then we need new facilities for vehicle maintenance. So you see flying in here now, new vehicle maintenance as well as a wash bay. And one of the nice things that this does is connects the two buildings. It connects the two existing buildings, I should say. And then we wrap it up with bringing in shops into the back building and close it out with bringing in the vehicle and equipment storage on the back of the site. And so that's kind of the full building, but the next slide here shows the overall site as it would be developed. And I kind of went through each of the individual functional areas, and I'll touch on this again in a minute, but in the upper left-hand corner is the fuel island, the salt shed up at the top corner, and then we have bulk material storage bins in that left-hand corner. So I'm going to try to go through the phasing of the project real quick. We did look at, as JB touched on, in order to ease the impact of the cost of this project on the town, we've broken it up into 3 different phases. So phase 1 of the project, again, you've seen this image a couple of times. This is the existing facility. And phase 1, we would plan to build the office and office support. That would be an added building, an addition. No renovation quite yet. We'd make space in the office to move the existing admin into, and then build, as I indicated a moment ago, the fuel island and salt shed and bulk material storage. And that gives us a platform to start doing some of the next phases. So phase 2 includes renovations, building out fleet maintenance, partial vehicle and equipment storage, as well as the wash bay I mentioned, and then lastly, renovate the shops and material storage. And the last phase would be just to build out the remaining of the vehicle and equipment storage and the canopy that goes part and parcel with that. So those are the 3 phases we have laid out. And again, this is a completed project. You saw this a moment ago. So as far as the schedule goes, this slide is a very high-level slide. What we've got there, the bars represent the duration of a project, including both design and construction. We have green diamonds showing funding requests, presumably at a Springtown meeting, with the dark blue at fall. And you see phase 1 there, phase 2, and phase 3 extending out from spring of 2023 all the way out to 2030. And as far as costs go, this slide has a lot of information on it. There, again, are 3 phases, and it's broken down into construction costs, soft costs, and then a total cost for each phase, and then a roll-up for all 3 of them. And I'm not going to go through any of these in any detail, but they're all up there for you to see. And as JB mentioned, if there are any questions, JB, Joe, and myself would be happy to answer those. And this is just an example of the project cost summary I would just highlight on here, that we are building in design contingency and incorporating escalation, as well as during the construction, we would build in an owner's contingency as well as construction contingency. So I'm going to turn it back over to, oh, sorry, Joe.
No, that's
I
fine.
apologize.
I just wanted to give you a little insight. I'm from CHA. We're a full service OPM service, where we have interior cost estimators within our firm. Each step of the way, and Tony did a great job outlining actually the summary and trying to be the most cost effective for the town of Plymouth. But what we're going to do in conjunction with the designer is just do a check and balance each step of the way through conceptual design development and construction documents to make sure that we're allocating what the costs are, what the best interest of trying to consolidate and utilize the space for combined use through each of the departments. And then look at the costs associated with what the market is driving. We're looking at a number of different facilities and bidding them. I mean, you can imagine through a pandemic, and you've seen all of the cost escalations from fuel surcharges and materials. We're looking at that on a daily basis and trying to allocate what the best usage of material and the best allocation of longevity for this building. I understand that this isn't a building that you build, 3 or 4 times. This is a building you're going to build once. We want to make sure that we build it right. Thank you.
So thank you, Tony and Joe. So just to wrap it up, we have a couple more slides. So what are the benefits of an improved new DPW, and what will it do for the DPW in our community? So the 3 phases of construction will make the project affordable to the town. State-of-the-art facility will be welcoming to both employees and to the public. It will be code/OSHA compliant and a safe work environment for all of our employees. It will protect the town's multi-million-dollar investment in our vehicles and equipment, and far more efficient workspace and response times to better serve the public. What are our next steps? So here we listed some of our next steps, but I just want to kind of highlight, the overall presentation this evening in terms of, we're really looking down the road here. You saw the 3 phases in the overall schedule and costs. $100 million for the 3 phases, which includes significant contingency fees. 2030 would be the end of construction, but we are trying to wrap up growth, service needs, employee needs, OSHA requirements, to have really a state-of-the-art facility. What we want to see is an unbelievable public works for our employees, and something that really allows us to provide the service we need to. This process, which we've been discussing this evening, in terms of working with the building committee, putting out the request for qualifications for OPM services, designer selection, going through your designer selection committee to even get to the building committee, all of that is dictated to us through Mass Procurement 149M. That's a real methodical process, and we've been kind of following that, since last fall. So we've been at this for quite a while now. It'll probably be a year. It will be a year this August, September. So we've been working pretty hard on this to get to just this point, and there's a ton of work left. But what our next steps are is to present this project to any and all town boards and committees, if we're going to put this on the spring warrant, which would be CIC, Advisory and Finance, Select Board. We would really need that last phase approved by the building committee. And then we do outreach, whatever outreach is necessary to, to provide an understanding, a basic, knowledge of what we're doing. I know we provided information to the Select Board. The cost estimates, there's a lot more detail in that packet we're being shown this evening, and we can put all that online for everybody to see. But this is just design construction of phase 1, and then would be the planning for phases in 2 and 3. So thank you very much, and again, we're all here this evening to answer any questions.
Tony, is the reason for this facility, or JB, you can maybe answer it too, is it the longevity of the building? Is it the age of the buildings? Is it we're outgrowing it, or is it lack of maintenance on the buildings? I know we're replacing all our fire departments, fire stations, and we knew that there was a serious lack of maintenance on those buildings, and we're working to correct that problem so it doesn't happen again. But the DPW, it's the services they provide, 106 square mile town. I mean, it's enormous, and I realize we need good facilities. So, a couple things. I just hope if this building is okay through all the boards and committees, that it's a building that's going to last and it's going to be taken care of, and also, it's going to be tough with the money we're spending on fire stations, to get this project, $100 million project. It's going to be a tough task to get probably through town meeting, I would think so. But it's going to be over 10 years, you're thinking, and, okay. So anyways, there was a few questions I just threw in there.
Yeah, and I'll do my best to both remember them and answer them, and JB, please feel free to chime in. I don't think I wouldn't say there's a lack of repair. I think the DPW is doing a great job with what they, with what they can, but part of the problem is they've just outgrown the facility. The town has grown a lot. Another issue is that these buildings were not purpose-built for the DPW, as JB talked about, for instance. One of them was a rider facility, not a DPW operation, so it doesn't have the employee support facilities and those sorts of things. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I have a little tickle. So, JB, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but as far as you heard the comments.
Yeah. Chal, I could speak for probably 7 hours in terms of response, but just in terms of generic detail, in terms of why we need a new DPW facility, is we've completely outgrown it in terms of space. If anybody walks through the DPW, you can see that every office is full. We don't have enough bathrooms. We don't have wash facilities. I think we touched on that. We don't have showers. I mean, we do, but they're just completely outdated and not used. Women's room, we have 2 for the whole facility, and they share them in our office, and then we have a couple over next door. But they're always an issue. Again, no ADA, no elevator. Our sign shop is on the 2nd floor, and there's no access. We have to constantly bring equipment down, so that's not safe. Salt shed is undersized. It's designed wrong with the doors on the front as opposed to the side. So we have a circulation pattern. All of our plows are outside, so we're hooking up plows in the elements, so they're cold. As I mentioned, cold starts, that's a problem. We are on the coast, so all of your equipment is corroding and rusting that much faster. In terms of OSHA, our HVAC systems, our lighting, our storage, as the years go by, we have more and more issues with those type of things. But for me, a lot of it is, we're separated in terms of our administration, where we don't work together. I have parks and forestry and water in another building. I have my offices under my roof, where we are. Our snow and ice room is no longer because of COVID. We kind of had to move people around, which is a huge issue. The highway manager does snow and ice out of his office, out of probably a 10 by 10 area, managing, operating over 200 pieces of equipment. Our SCADA office is in the 2nd floor. SCADA is the supervisory control system for water, and that's run out of the water office, which is small, outdated, not lighted, tough working space, and that is, again, we put out 3.5 million gallons of water a day, 10 wells. So, I mean, it's a very detailed, sophisticated system, undersized, underutilized office space. So there's a number of things combined, Charlie, that, why we're here. And I understand, we talked about this at COPC last week, and I know, Derek and Brad are working with Lynn in terms of how do we finance that. And, in speaking with Joe and Tony and Weston and Sampson and the building committee, these guys have all done a number of DPWs in Massachusetts, a number of big DPWs. And when you look at 122,000 square feet, we're one of the bigger ones. And we are. We have almost 130 employees, and we have more equipment than most. And during the wintertime, all of our equipment is inside. Our sweepers, our trommel, we try to keep everything inside to try to keep them dry so they don't freeze and cause mechanical problems. So that's the issue. But, in terms of the financing, that's why we're looking at the 3 phases. And speaking with Lynn and Derek, we understand it's about affordability without doing an override or a debt exclusion, and that's what we're looking at, so we can really approach, the needs of fire and DPW kind of simultaneously.
Well, I like the fact that we have the land to build it on. So that's a big plus, because we all know how hard that is to find the land to build on. We found that with our fire station, so.
Yeah, we have on Camelot Drive, we have a fantastic site. I mean, zoning, lack of abutters. We're going to be putting sewer on Camelot Drive, so we'll be able to build a wash bay. We have town water. We have enough room to do what we need to do, which is a huge cost savings. Plus, we're working with, CHA and Weston and Sampson. We realized the benefit to rehab, remodel as to reconstruct. So we're really trying to save as many dollars as we can and make them go further. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the idea. I don't like the 100 million. And I don't want to say it like this, but it's going to be show me the money. Because it's going to be a hard-pressed sell, I believe, at town meeting. Even though it's phased, I like that idea. How many, vacant acres do we have over where the wastewater treatment facility is that aren't being used or aren't required for that site? I
want to say it's 33 or 40 acres.
All right, so say
we have a
25
substantial
to
amount of
40.
acreage. Yeah.
Okay. Do you ever think you're going to actually need all that land over there for wastewater facilities?
I do. I don't have the crystal ball in terms of what's going to happen. I know, working with our new vulnerability planner, we've already reached out to organics company to start collecting organics, with the wastewater treatment plant to mix with compost and take that on a commercial residential basis. As you know, we're trying to work with the state to kind of modify our sewer discharge permit and stop using the outfall and use the beds. And who knows what will happen out there, because we do all of our staging out there. We do all of our materials out there. We do our yard debris, our yard collection. So that site is very valuable. Fire just put their tower up there. You know, our new water main for Forges Well runs through there. But we do have land. It's just I don't know how much of it we will need. But we do use it consistently, often, and it is such a great utility.
I just was thinking without the cuff, without even going over there, maybe just sell a few acres and take that money and use it to finance your new building. So it ain't on the burden of the taxpayer, but the other department is, so that's why I asked you the question that I asked you.
We can look at it.
Not that I don't think you need it, but I do know in the pipeline, we're repairing the rest of whatever fire stations, firehouses we have now. We know on the radar, sooner or later, very soon, the police station is either going to be expanded or moved. We know Station 1, there's a little controversy over that, but I'm going to guess and say that's going. So we're going to be looking to replace that. Then the final factor, you know, looking at the planning of the future is, you know, have we reached out to the school department? Do we need an elementary school? I'm hearing rumblings we are. If we are, I'd like to base my decision, I'm sure everybody would in town, the town manager, the finance director, let's get the wish list in front of us and in some kind of order. Not saying one's more important, well, of course some are, I mean, we need schools. But if we, you know, this is the only way to make a accurate decision, rather than vote for something, give my support on something tonight and find out next week that, you know, this happened, and, you know, we need another school. I've been hearing 2 more elementary schools for a while now, and that maybe has changed. And I haven't officially heard that. I don't know, Brad, can you, not to put you on the spot, but are we in for another elementary school soon, or if we're not, that's fine too?
Yeah, we met with the superintendent of schools, the facilities director of the schools, and the new school business manager with Derek, myself, and Lynn, maybe 2 weeks ago now. And they said they were going to start preliminary discussions of looking and building a feasibility study to look at specifically the north part of town for elementary school, but that'll lead into more conversation about other parts of town and what may be needed. So it's definitely on the horizon.
I guess what I'm trying to say, long story short, is I'd like to see what the wish list is, or what the town actually needs, what the costs are, and how we move forward with that. And I think we should do that as a community. But I mean, I like the presentation, I definitely like the idea. I know that the DPW has come a long way, still has a way to go. I know that the guys and the girls that are working there, the women there, I know they didn't even have a coffee pot, but they do now,
Because you bought it for them.
and that's okay. And it's just little stuff like that, you know, when they are out working these storms and these big shifts, that, you know, we should be feeding them, we should be giving them coffee, and they should have a proper place to shower. So even if we didn't have the money to do all this now, I'm all in for if we need showers remodeled, and I'm sure just to get by until, you know, hey, maybe we do have the money. But $100 million, I don't know, that's a lot that's the cost of one of the high schools, actually. North High School and South High School, I think it was $100 million apiece,
Right,
if I remember it.
right.
And that was back before COVID. So I'm not here to rain on your parade. I like the whole concept. I just would like to find out, you know, what the priorities of the town are as a whole, meaning the finance director needs to be here, the superintendent, I believe, and Brad and Derek, excuse me. And get everybody together and find out, you know, what we really need to go in what direction. So, I mean, there's only so much money. I mean, if you're asking me, do I'm going to support this for an override, I'm going to tell you right now, no. And there's probably going to be about 4 more right after that one. You know, I'm just not going to put it all on the taxpayer. There's too many unknowns right now. So, that's my piece of that.
Any other board members have comments? John?
Mr. Beater, I apologize for being late. Trust me, this is, for me, was going to be one of the highlights of the evening. So having said that, Mr. Quintal referenced, you know, a couple of high schools, and I was there at the presentation of the approach, I think it was AI3 with respect to South High School, and we were given 2 options. And it was $115 million to demo and build new over 2 years, or I think it was 110 million to modernize, but disrupt for 4 years. And we went with the complete demo, new construction, even though it was a $4 to $5 million more expensive. And I think what we did was absolutely the right thing to do. So I missed the presentation, but just, I look at phase 2 and you say renovation. So I guess my questions are, under this presentation, how much of this is modernization or renovation as opposed to new construction? And I know you're trying to keep the initial number down, but over the long term, are you truly saving anything as opposed to over-engineering it and building it all new to begin with? That makes sense?
It makes a ton of sense, and it's a great point, and we did go through that, John, and in your packet, you have a lot of that detailed. We had similar conversations, internally as you did with, the high school and AI3 in terms of how do you get the biggest bang of your buck? How do you sequence construction to save money? How do we, continue to work out of a DPW 24/7, 365 during construction? All with time and financial constraints in mind. So if you look at the slide here, going through that process, we realized, we don't want to, we could get office trailers, we could find a, temporary space, but we thought it would be best to kind of keep the existing office space, work out of those, build new, is phase 1, build the new salt shed and fuel pumps is phase 1. But all together, those 3 phases, we'd reuse almost 30,000 square feet of building, which is significantly cheaper than new construction. And Tony can and Joe can kind of go into those costs for a second. But, phase 1, we're looking at 20 million. And the reason why phase 1 is broken up the way it is it's paramount that we rehab our salt shed. We do not keep enough salt for one winter in that salt shed. That's been an eyesore, a problem of mine since I've got here. We got money from town meeting years ago. It was never enough. We had some issues with that, so we released that money. But salt shed's important. Fuel, pumps, relocating that to that back corner by MBO would phenomenal in terms of freeing up circulation for us. If anybody drives through our yard, you'll see that. So that was a big piece. And then the office space, we thought new construction would be a cost savings measure for us. But if you look at that detail, and I'll put this out there, that's all spelled out in terms of our space needs assessment and feasibility, and looking at construction dollars. And Tony and Joe, I don't know if I summed that up nicely.
Absolutely. And you know what? And to your point, you're 100% correct. Every district throughout the Commonwealth struggles financially with all of the implications that happen with any construction, public construction projects. I've been involved with schools, DPWs, public safeties, and each of them are very equally important. Some would prioritize others higher than others, but there are strategic methods of coming up as a game plan as to what your overall exposure is going to be. And there's some federal programs out there that we're actually tracking right now to see if there's some federal funds out there that would help first responding buildings. And we'll work closely with the town of Plymouth and the town manager to identify those. But I can tell you strategically on this, kicking it down the can down the road doesn't help you at all. So coming up with a game plan and actually putting a strong thought process at how you're going to manage it is the best approach, and I agree with you 100%. As far as existing building reuse, your comment was it worth doing? That particular part of the building, absolutely. I think we can renovate that 29,800 square feet and really bring it up to the code requirements, not only energy efficient, but mechanical. Everyone says, a cup of coffee and a good place to shower and bathe is a good thing. That's not all they need. They need life safety issues revolve around that. I did a study recently on 2 towns in the state of Massachusetts where they had outdoor storage on the mechanical equipment. They did an evaluation at the cost implications of what it was to replace that equipment because it was stored outside. And they come to realize that it wasn't hundreds of thousands, it was millions of dollars that they ended up changing that equipment. So the essentialness of getting it indoors, as JB indicated, is probably paramount to make sure that your longevity and your cost efficiency with this building and the equipment is held tight.
Just to add to that, everybody, I think this is such an important piece because, remember, we went through a whole space needs planning piece, and as I said, all of our equipment is outside. So when you look at that 122,800 square feet, that's what we need for all of our office space. That's what we need to put our equipment, our frontline pieces under roof. That's also with us taking over schools' fleet maintenance and fire's fleet maintenance. And all of our existing building space would be renovated. So all of your current DPW facility space at the Ryder Truck facility and MBO building would be fully renovated. The new construction at 93,000 square feet is what we need to properly run. So that's all new. But we would be fully renovating, rehabbing what we have existing as part of this plan.
And I would just add that the renovation we're doing is mostly renovating a use of one kind for a similar use. We're not renovating existing vehicle maintenance for some other brand-new use that it's not necessarily a good fit. It's mostly for future vehicle maintenance, upgrades and modernization. Likewise, the building out back would be, I mean, that's kind of a shop-type environment, and that's how it would be renovated, is for that same use in the future as well.
Thank you. So, just building on what Mr. Quintal had mentioned earlier, and forget your name in the middle. Joe, so you talked about, I mean, that's what government does. They kick cans down the road. But we're not kicking a can down the road. We have about 10 to 15 cans to deal with. And there's a bottleneck coming. It's here. The bottleneck is here. It's just going to get bigger. So you have 8 elementary schools, with the youngest 2 were built in '77. And you built 4 in the '70s. And I'm not an expert, but I'm guessing that structurally, the 4 built in the '70s are inferior to the 4 that were built in the '50s in 1910 and 1913. I'll go out on a limb and say that. But the school department has done a better job than the town over the years of maintaining their product. But overall, government can't think longer than a year at a time, and it's kind of like it's a competition to who gets the town meeting or the Board of Selectmen first, or the Select Board, forgive me. So there should be some sort of working group, Mr. Brindisi, Ms. Cavaco, comprised of school officials, town officials, and it's not difficult to figure out that in the next 15 to 35 years, the town needs billions between schools, fire stations, DPW. They deserve a top rate, first rate. So, and we got to think long term, and we got to think outside of the general fund. You can't just go to them, put it on the ballot and say, do you want to raise property taxes X amount of dollars? I mean, there's ways of doing that, not all of it, but some of it, outside of the general fund. So that's my 2 cents.
I know you touched on the salt shed and, you know, the need for that. And aren't we, or isn't the Commonwealth and communities now going to calcium? I think it's called liquid calcium. They
Meg.
treat the roads before and after. So if that's the case, then why is the big push for a new salt shed? I don't understand that.
Yeah, a lot of municipalities go into salt brine, which we have been experimenting with, but it's, you know, in terms of Plymouth operations, you know, salt brine on 400 miles of road is a little bit different. You know, our gravel roads, we still do a combination of sand, salt, depending on the use. So, I mean, we're always going to need salt, but yeah, salt brine, you know, we do pre-treat, we are doing all of that. Even more reason why we need to do DPW, because a lot of that equipment needs to be inside because we use spray bars for that, and we're not equipped like that yet.
And I must just add, because my trucks are also, my equipment's also outside, because I can't afford to put them all inside, but I'd love to. But the point I'm bringing up is, I think the calcium's doing more damage to the vehicles now than the elements outside. I mean, I see those things are rusted in like 3 years. It's like crazy. So whatever the new system is, it's definitely tearing up everybody's vehicles. It's at a faster pace than, you know, so I get that. So I think a sub-alternative until the vehicles are inside, is like we do, is, you know, we're washing the undercarriages constantly, especially in the winter when you can. But I mean, other than that, it's Rust City.
Yeah, we don't,
So-
I mean, and we don't have a wash bay. So, you know, we're hosing our stuff off
But
with
even,
fire
even if you
hoses.
just brought them in and you didn't wash them, I think you're gonna have the same effect than if you just left them outside, pretty much, because the calcium and everything's stuck on the trucks and.
But you know, Dickie, when you don't wash them, they go that much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the rust is pretty bad, it's because we use the mag chloride, and that's what's doing it.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed it, that's why I brought it up.
Right. But in this proposal is a new wash bay to specifically
Okay,
deal
yeah, I
with that.
saw that, yeah.
Which
I
would
always
be,
thought we
which would
needed a
be
wash bay,
incredible
too.
for the DPW.
I'm not
in
saying
terms
I don't like the idea, it's just
Yeah.
I wanna know how to pay for it. And the only reason I asked you about if there was any extra land, I didn't mean like half of it.
Right, no,
But
that's-
2 or 3 acres, you know, industrial land, if we were to sell it to somebody, then you could take that money and put it towards your building, then it's not a burden on the taxpayer. You get what
Yeah.
you need, we scratch it off the list, and we go on to the elementary school or the fire station or the police station. But it still all has to be, you know, for me, I think, I agree with John, and that's where I was going with this in the first place, is
I think
to
there's
have
some
a little
really,
round
there's-
table and the town e-board and see what, you know, what we're gonna need going forward, and we can plan. Then nobody's under the pressure, you know, because that's not gonna work with me, who gets here first. You know, maybe in the old days, John. But, you know, it's priority, you know what I mean? And that's what it is, so.
well, when we meet internally, we can
Oh,
have that
we know
discussion.
from the finance director, this building's paid off, this, you know, this is taken care of, like the mortgage, we'll say, for common folk talk. And then we could, well, you know what, then we can refinance over here, borrow some here, but without all that information, I can't give you those answers of support yet.
I just wanted to clarify, it wasn't that I was insinuating that you're kicking anything down the road. My plan was just to strategically come up with a plan at how you're going to do it, that's all. I just wanted to be clear with that, that's all. Thank you.
John always says that.
For the past 12 years. 12 years, right, John?
I'm sure I got a few too, John.
So if the board members have nothing more to say, I've got a little bit more to say. Don't be looking at your clock now.
No, somebody's calling, that's all.
Well, I know Mr. Quintel said he didn't want to rain on the parade, and I think I'm going to hurricane all over the parade. So, first of all, I'm actually perplexed that an almost $100 million project has already been vetted by the building committee and COPC, and we knew nothing about it. So that's bothersome to me. Secondly, this would be the second largest project from the schools, you know, except for the schools. I mean, do we have any long and short-term plans? Do we have those goals with the department? What our goals are, where you think the department's going to be in 5 or 10 years? Because one of the things that I want to do is that I know that the fire department is wrapping up their feasibility project, and they're going to have goals. And I believe that the police department is embarking on the same thing. And I think the town manager should work with the DPW director and a consultant and do that same kind of study, because there is no way that I'm going to support a $90 million investment until we know what the outlines of the department are and what our projected long-term goals are and short-term goals. But I have to say that out of all of these pretty pictures and everything, I am extremely bothered that we're like the last to know about it. So I'm just going to put that out there. But I'm hoping that the board agrees that we instruct the town manager to do that analysis, and then we have better information. We know what our goals are, and along with what John and Dickie said, we can come up with some kind of a plan. But, and like I said, sorry to hurricane on your parade, but there's just, I have 90 million reasons to say no today. And until I have all that information, I won't change my position. So, does anybody think that Mr. Brindisi shouldn't do that exercise?
I mean, if I
Depends on what
could
the scope of the
respond, you know,
exercise is.
I'm happy to work with our DPW director and go through that analysis. I think you referenced the fire department's going through their comprehensive operational study right now, and I know Chief Flynn has suggested doing the same. And their thought process is, you know, looking at the current staffing levels, looking at the equipment needs, and forecasting out where the department needs to be in the next 10 years. And I think that's what you're suggesting here
Exactly.
today, so I'm happy to work with JB on that.
And if we have to have some kind of consulting service assist in that, then please do that, because I think it's difficult for us to sit here and say, we know we need 2 schools, or at least 1. And, you know, but in the meantime, when we don't have these shower facilities and we don't have a proper break room, which we haven't had for quite a while, go rent a trailer. We have trailers that you can have a good, decent shower facility for these guys. If the concern truly is to have our employees have the proper, you know, shower and break rooms for all these storms and whatever work that they do, then put something in place now instead of saying, you're not going to be able to have it for another 10 years. Because if it's important right now, it's important right now. So that's my 2 cents.
The last thing I want to say is that we're good at kicking the can down the road. I mean, we kicked the schools down the road until the state stepped in and said, either build the school or we're going to force you to. We'll build it and you're going to have to pay for it. Luckily, they come up with the model schools, which we were reciprocated, I think it was 68%. And it's too bad we couldn't, they didn't do that for DPWs and fire stations and everything else. But I would like to keep working on this project but see if we look at some kind of grants, federal grants, anything. Maybe we can get the first phase started. I mean, I don't want to give up on this. And, I mean, look what happened to fire stations. It cost us a lot more money, you know, from the original, when we knew we needed it, and it's cost us millions more. So this, the longer we put this off, the more it's going to cost us. And we know we need it. We know we need it, so I just hope we can get some grants to help us, but don't give up on this.
I believe the first step is to do this analysis that we just asked Eric to do, and then we have all the information that we need.
Can I make a quick comment? Because there's been a lot of dialogue, and, you know, I've been, you know, here since 2011. I've been here and kicking the can down the road a long time, and that's really the driver why we're here, you know, to talk about this. And, you know, Betty, Charlie, you all have raised awesome points, all right? We have done the space needs planning and the feasibility. I'll send that out in terms of future projections, in terms of employees, what we need to do to service this community based on other DPWs. Weston and Sampson has a tremendous amount of data. I will send you that information. We have the structure and the foundation. But, you know, typically the way that we work is, you know, in working with the building committee is, you know, once we get money from town meeting, we follow a process. We don't come to the board until we're seeking those funds, and we were going to do that if we were going to go to fall town meeting. We were having discussions about coming to present to you guys. We have not presented to COPC anything, CPC anything. We presented to COPC just the building piece of it. We didn't get into detail about DPW. We went once to the building committee because we went through designer selection, which is a requirement of 149. We're just following a process. But we will continue to work with the board and put any and all information out there because, you know, DPWs, you know, throughout the U.S. are always last. Schools, police, fire, you know, we get it. They're always the priority. And what I'm here telling you this evening is if you wait until 2030 and thereafterwards, we're going to have problems because we are already not compliant with OSHA. We did a significant amount of upgrades at MBO in 2019, 2020. Now our main building is starting to see those problems. We are doing, you know, doors and, you know, generators and lighting to keep up with it. But at the end of the day, you know, given the size of your DPW, the size of the town is still growing. You see the development out there. We still have to plow the roads, the storms. We are short that much square footage. And we have the backup to support that. So, you know, we're happy to work with the manager's office, finance director, to get you that information and to get the public to understand that. But your DPW currently, and we know it's going to grow, unless we stop working altogether, we need that.
Well, don't we have the same amount of employees that we had like back in the 70s or something?
We've been growing. If you remember, we added 5 positions in the cemeteries last year. Your facilities department is growing. We are finally really full staff in a lot of those DPW divisions. We would like to move engineering under our roof to free up space on the 4th floor. Our mechanics do a phenomenal, actually, all of our employees do a phenomenal job. But if you can consolidate some of the schools and fire, you're saving space and money on that side. So that's the creative thinking that some of you are suggesting that we're already doing internally.
I don't know what analysis that you guys have, and I'm sure Derek will take a look at it, but I want the same thing that police and fire are doing. Despite what you guys are doing, I want that same level of detail, because I think that's where the projections are of what we need and what we have to do, and that's what I'm looking for, so. And in the meantime, if you need showers, go find a shower trailer and rent it. If you need break room space, again, go find a trailer to rent it, because you've needed it for a long time. So let's get something in there for the guys, that they have a place to go to eat a meal, like Dick said, fed, whatever, take a rest. I mean, we all know that we haven't been up to ocean standards for as long as I've been here, so 5 years. You know what I mean? So kicking the can down the road, we can stop the can from rolling so fast if we put some of these other things in place instead of spending $30 million. So.
Yeah, again, so I'm happy to work with JB on this. Sounds like they have a foundation, but what I'm hearing is, what of our projected staffing, given population growth, the number of road miles in this situation that has grown, the equipment we need to support the operations that were identified, I think, on slide 1. But then the deployment plan is really where fire and police is going. It's like, how are we going to deploy those resources? What's the most efficient way to deploy those resources, given a growing community? And so, again, I'm happy to work with JB. I'm happy to identify maybe a consultant that could help us identify that. I can tell you, though, just in the last week or so, and JB, I haven't talked to you about this because we both have been away the last couple of weeks, but folks have brought it to me, like, going back to the old district plan, is that something we should reconsider? I know it may cost more money because, you're trying to centralize operations, but, is that something that we can consider? I think that those are all the questions I imagine you want answered.
Right.
Whether or not any of those ideas are actually worthwhile in pursuit. So, again, happy to work on that. But I can tell you right now, $100 million acquisition, 2 fire stations that we've already talked about that need to be replaced. Schools, and I say that plural because we know North Plymouth is one. We've talked to the school department about potential others. I think Selectman Mahoney hit the nail on the head. We're talking over probably $1 billion of work. JB presented at COPC, just in the next 3 years, just preventative maintenance alone in our buildings is $20 million. That's just a preventative maintenance. So we really have to be mindful where we want to be as far as our finances. And I would say the next 3 to 5 years, we really have to tighten our belt and think about where our priorities are going to be. And so, not saying this isn't a priority, but there's just so many ahead of us, and we have to really be strategic on where we're going to spend our money.
Well, our budget moving forward, and we've all talked about it, and we've all heard from our residents, we need to be razor thin, because they're suffering, and everybody's suffering. So, like I said, I need more information, and that's what you're saying is what I want to see.
Sure.
Harry?
Derek, outside of these assessments, it was mentioned about a group be put together. Are you going to put together a group? Because, I have to tell you, sitting here as a taxpayer, I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out. we have to remember the taxpayers pay for this. This is not in a vacuum, okay? I'm just learning new schools, not surprised, because they're ancient. And John's probably right, the older ones are probably in better shape than the newer ones. But I can imagine the residents at home right now watching this, and 100 million here, new fire station 1, new Bourne Fire Station, $11 million per fire station to upgrade them, except for the new north one, which already cost us X amount of millions of dollars. You know, on and on and on. And John's assessment of upwards of $1 billion, when you put in the maintenance, which we have not really truly addressed, the ongoing maintenance. We throw a few $1 million into the fund every town meeting, but we never really have addressed a funding source for that. And I think that a group needs to get together, because it just kind of feels like, you know, and I understand why it is, because we are expanding. We have been kicking the cans down the road on many fronts, but it's getting really intense to have all of these requests for millions and millions of dollars almost monthly from another source. And we need to, on that level, we need to have our act together in terms of making a plan for what is possible and what isn't possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, again, we've already met with the finance director just to look at the numbers. We've talked about a comprehensive capital improvement plan that's going to project out the next 10 years, and which will include these buildings as well. And so you'll see black and white exactly what our projected cost is going to be and what our projected revenue is going to be. And I can tell you right now, given everything we just described tonight, there is no municipality in Massachusetts that has the bandwidth or the financial resources to fund that amount of money. There's none of us. So in that sense, I mean, glass being half full, we just have to be smart about, you know, where we layer these projects. And I don't think it's over the next 10 years. It may be the next 15 years that we have to lay these projects out. So again, you'll get that information. Brad and is working with the finance director. The finance director has already asked the departments to submit to her their 10-year capital improvement plans by September 1st. So that's an active conversation that's happening right now. And so we will have more information for the board and for the community at large as soon as we start pulling those pieces together.
Did anyone buy any lottery tickets tonight?
I did.
We could build a school, if anyone wants to pitch in.
I just want to add one thing on real quick too, that it's not definitive that there's going to be a new school needed. I don't want people leaving here saying that that is 100% going to happen. They're looking at a feasibility study to determine whether or not there's land in a certain area to consolidate 2 elementary schools, 3 elementary schools into 1. So that's a discussion, and that's the money they were talking about putting aside to have that feasibility study done. But I know from my prior experience and just general looking at schools and money spent to build, like John, you mentioned before, it comes down to, if you invest money into an older building, you actually end up saving money in the long run by building a new, which is just, it's common practice. So all that will be weighed out, but I can tell you with MSBA reimbursement on some things you wouldn't get with renovating an older building as well, it makes total sense. We're going to get 50% probably at least back on every dollar we spend with an MSBA approved project. So all stuff that'll play itself out, but I just don't want everyone leaving here tonight saying we're definitively building a new school, because that's not where we are right now, but that'll play out down the road of where they want to go.
I mean, JB, you said that you want to like move people around and consolidate, but what about Cedarville? Isn't that building empty? There's like no one down there, is there? That's a pretty good-sized building.
That's correct. I mean, we just use that as a salt shed right now in storage for our carpenters. And we use our, we work out of there for a shop.
Well, if you're looking for room, maybe there's a whole other department you can move down there. So, just saying. It's sad to see an empty building, just empty. Or we could sell it.
Exactly. That's what I'm about. Selling the ones that aren't full and putting it towards your goals. That's where I've been leaning with this. So it's not on the taxpayer. So, I mean, we, have management look at all this. We're looking at some properties now that we want to put on the market and who knows where, but think a little out of the box. If it alleviates that problem, then we're back to police and fire and possibility of a school and who knows the unknowns, every year something pops up. Something fails somewhere, so.
John?
Yeah, just, JB, I'm sorry, what was the price per square foot, new construction, what was used for square foot?
Is it
In
9
the
or 6?
600s?
I'm going to defer to Tony on that. He's more up to speed with the cost.
Just curious.
So 700, Joe, 650, you're pretty good with?
650 for renovation, 700 for new.
Okay, thank you.
That much difference.
All right.
That much.
Just want to, Dick, no disrespect, but selling the land, selling the buildings is not an option. Eventually, you're going to need land to build a new facility, so I don't think that's an option for this.
Well, the buildings that we aren't using,
Know what I'm saying, though, but not this particular.
we're not saying we're selling those, just
All right.
other
land.
buildings.
Misunderstood it, because,
Yeah, like Cedarville is basically empty. We could sell that piece of property, put it in our real estate account, and use that money to offset some of the needs for the 50 million other projects that we have. So it's just up to us to prioritize that. But like I said, I honestly expect to see, Mr. Beater, a shower trailer and a break room trailer for the guys this year during all these storms.
We have a nice bathroom trailer coming, Betty.
I know we
Put
do.
that right next to my office.
You can park it right there.
We will.
If it ever gets
We
there,
will.
because it's supposed to be there by now.
Yeah, my understanding, the new delivery date is, at least the finish date or completion date of the unit is July 29th. So I
Okay.
don't know when delivery will be after that. But I,
July.
just to wrap it up, I know you guys have other business to do, but, I want to thank the board. We've gone through a process, which is a process. It's my job to tell you your overall costs. We can get creative and manipulate things to make it work, because that's what we do, and we understand, the drivers, and that was our goal tonight, is so you understood the drivers of what we want, where we want to be, where we want to go. We just have to figure out how we're going to get there. And we don't want it to be a burden on the taxpayer. That's why when I first came up here, I mentioned debt exclusion override. That's not where we want to go. I think we have to do some collaboration and figure things out. But we've done a lot over the DPW over the years to help them out. Coffee makers, food, their break rooms. But, it's still inadequate, and aware of that. But we'll keep that going. But then again, that's why the 2020 town meeting gave us some funding to look at this and to follow a process. And that's what this is. So we do have a plan now. So hopefully that can engage in some outside federal dollars or state dollars. We don't know, but at least we're at this point to know that that could justify that.
Okay,
So thank you very much.
thank you. Folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break before we start the committee appointments. Okay, we're back. Thank you for the 5-minute break, maybe a little longer. So we're going to go with our Save Our Bay Coalition presentation. If we, I know we're way beyond our time limits, so if you
Well,
could.
we will try to make it brief.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the Select Board. We're very grateful to be here tonight, and we don't want to take a lot of your time, but the good news is we're not asking for money.
Yay!
But, yeah, and the bad news is we are bringing news of impending economic catastrophe, which we are making common cause that we're not going to let this happen. But we are with Save the Bay. My name's Henrietta Cosentino. I'm on the Save Our Bay Steering Committee, and we are a coalition of numerous conservation organizations, industry people, real estate people, people from all walks of life who are horrified at the prospect that Holtec is considering and is intent on dumping radioactive wastewater into our bay. I've brought two colleagues. I'd like them to introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us this evening. My name is Leslie Danielson, and I'm an advisory committee member for Save Our Bay. And like I said, we're here to just kind of give you an update on what we're experiencing and where we are.
Hello, hi, I'm Christine Danielson. I'm also a member of the advisory committee for Save Our Bay. And a little bit about me, I also do climate lobby work, and I'm also a part of the Plymouth Water Conservation Committee, so very near and dear. So.
Yes. And so I wanted to start by saying, Betty, thank you so much for making a very powerful statement last night at the NDCAP meeting. As you probably all know, the Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel meets every 2 months right here. So this is our home away from home for the week. Betty made a very strong statement. I appreciated, we all appreciated it, not just for the substance of what you said about Plymouth's feelings about this horrible idea, but also you're pointing out that so much of it has been without your knowledge. I mean, so many developments. We too are experiencing that phenomenon. Things are happening on Beacon Hill and we don't hear about them. Things are happening from Holtec and we feel like we're all the last to know. So could we go back to that first slide, that previous, that is a great, you recognize the locus, the site, historic Plymouth, and that is our poster, Not One Drop. It is a meme, you might say, that Betty used in her speech back in April, and we really mean it. Not one drop more of Holtec contaminated water should go into the bay. League of Women Voters, Sierra Club, Lobstermen's Association, Mass Seafood Collaborative, Realtors of Southeastern Massachusetts, although I don't remember the exact name. All of us are in this organization, ad hoc and very short-lived, because this is going to be resolved one way or another by December, and probably before that, because Holtec has announced that it intends to give us its final decision. And by the way, this is the conceit that they have, that it's entirely their decision, by the end of the third quarter, which is September, or early in the fourth quarter. So it may happen at the next NDCAP meeting, and this is rather horrifying. Okay, so going on. Where is that water? You may wonder, which water are we talking about? There are multiple locations within the reactor, within this site, that contain the water, but most of it is in the torus, in the dryer separator pit, and most significantly in the spent fuel pool. Altogether, it is more than a million gallons of water. The spent fuel pool water is where the spent fuel rods steeped for a long time. And therefore, we can assume that that water is extremely dirty, not just with chemicals, but with radiation, various kinds of radiation, including, of course, tritium, cesium, radioactive cobalt, radioactive magnesium, and many other really nasty things. So it's much more than the waste that was daily circulated while Plymouth operated, and is of much greater quantity. Theoretically, Holtec has 4 options. Number 1, release it into the bay. That's close and cheap, easy. It's the path of least resistance. They could also theoretically evaporate the water, but having disassembled so much of the plant and so much of the infrastructure, they no longer have the wherewithal to evaporate the water. It's not there. So it's a theoretical option, it's not a real one. Transport off-site is the one of 4 bad options, the one option that we want to see happen, because it would be taken to licensed radiation waste sites, of which there are quite a few in our country, maybe 5. There's one in Texas, there's one in Tennessee, there's one in Idaho. And this is a perfectly legal option. The NRC has endorsed it. We endorse it. We would all like to see that water taken to a licensed site where it would be turned into a sludge and buried far from population centers. The 4th option, and this is a threat which I believe is just a threat, a game of chicken. The fourth option is to keep all the water on site until permanent repository is functioning. And we know that there is no permanent repository yet, and there doesn't seem to be anything in the offing. Now, the problem with number 4 is that David Noyes, the compliance manager and sort of assistant manager of Pilgrim, says that the only possible place for it to be stored is in the torus, which is that donut-shaped sort of container outside the container, which is used only in emergency situations, but it's very large. It's really for overflow. Those uses are no longer relevant because the plant is no longer operating. But the problem here is that the base of the torus is cracked. So it is not a reliable option, nor is it an option that Holtec is actually willing to take there, because they want to get out as fast as they can. So the timeline since May. You all know what happened in May. You remember that Markey held his hearing, and you remember that the NRC then came to town and presented its new rules for decommissioning. That was in May. Now in June, on June 1st, Save Our Bay sponsored a wonderful webinar with Dr. Barry Potvin, who is our chair of our Board of Health, and who happens to know a great deal about radiation. He worked with radioactive material for several decades and understands very well what it involves. He presented the impact of radionuclides, but particularly tritium, and the impact when it is uptaken organically by the small marine creatures. It's a very different phenomenon from tritium when you just drink it. It has much more potent effects, and tritium is a radionuclide that cannot be filtered out. There are other radionuclides that can be filtered out and will be filtered out, but tritium can't. And it's probably already there in the algae, in the tiny marine creatures, and so forth, but this would add a huge amount to the load. Irina Repina from the Woods Hole, facility, is an expert on hydrology, and she explained with charts and so forth and maps exactly how the circulation in our connected bay system works, and she showed how and why the dumped water would not be carried straight out to the Atlantic and diffused. Rather, and particularly in the summer, it would sink into the mud of the bay, and the tritium would get uptaken by the marine creatures, because our bay currents are very particular and very complicated, and there really is no straight path out to the Atlantic, unfortunately. The EPA, first, Dr. Singh's letter. He wrote a letter in May to Markey, and then he wrote a second letter to Markey in early June. And he said that shipping off-site would be contrary to their economic justice, sorry, I said economic. That is a mistake. It should say environmental justice policies. Please note, we'll send you the corrected, I didn't notice that until now. No, this was very rich because Singh claimed that shipping the water would be environmentally unjust, but somehow dumping it into the bay would be just fine. This is strange logic because they've been shipping low-level and mid-level nuclear waste to West Texas for 3 years, and they have every intention of shipping our dry casks all the way to New Mexico, if and when they get permission for their consolidated interim storage facility, or, well, never mind what it's pronounced, it's the acronym means, Consolidated Interim Storage Facility, and they're building a huge one in New Mexico where they want to bring all the nuclear waste from all over the country, and they see no problem with environmental injustice in that. But shipping the water, no, because the real truth is it would cost $20 million. So this suggestion to ship the water to another location for discharge runs counter to our basic tenets of environmental justice, which has led us to discard the idea. Our estimate of the cost to foist Pilgrim's, note the language, to foist Pilgrim's water is approximately 20 million, 250 truckloads driving approximately 2,000 miles each way, over 125,000 gallons of diesel fuel burned, and over 1,000 heavily load handling evolutions that will have to be performed by the plant's crew. This all sounds like a sob story, and it is. It's showing us that they really care about that 20 million, even though it's actually chump change compared to the $1.1 billion trust fund that they took over when they came to Pilgrim. Okay. You recognize this? It makes you love Plymouth. Anyway, June 17th, the EPA sent a letter to Singh, and basically it was a smackdown. They said, you have misunderstood the EP regulations, you've misunderstood the NIPD's permit, you have put a spin on it that we didn't intend. In summary, Holtec Pilgrim is not authorized under the current NIPD's permit to discharge pollutants in spent fuel water. If Holtec Pilgrim wishes to seek authorization from EPA for such discharges, Holtec must provide the information necessary for EPA to analyze the request and determine whether such a discharge would be in accordance with the CWA NIPD's regulations and any other applicable federal law. See details 40 CFR, blah, blah, blah. I hope this letter clarifies your options for ensuring compliance with the Clean Water Act. If you have questions, feel free to contact Damien Julian. I'm too close to the microphone, sorry. So that was EPA's smackdown. And going forward, it seems that Holtec doesn't really care about that. But we'll get to that in a minute. On June 14th, we had a celebration of the final votes on the Cape, voting 21 towns on the Cape and the Vineyard had a non-binding resolution protesting the dumping that was proposed by Holtec. And press was there. People from Markey's and Warren's office were there, and it was a very nice event. Going forward. This is the public advisory, the non-binding public advisory resolution passed on the Cape. Whereas Cape Cod Bay is a federal and state protected area and habitat for the endangered right whale, and whereas Cape Cod Bay provides a vital livelihood for fishermen and the tourist industry, and whereas the National Academies of Science have determined there is no safe dose of ionizing radiation, whereas One radioactive element in Holtec Pilgrim water is tritium, which concentrates up the food chain from sediment to seagrasses to the fish we eat. And whereas Holtec Pilgrim can discharge radioactive water anytime without approval of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and whereas the Attorney General of New Mexico has filed a lawsuit against the NRC for unlawful proceedings and illegal activities involving Holtec, and whereas the Commonwealth has the authority to stop the dumping, therefore, shall the people of the town of, name your town, direct the local government to communicate with Governor Charlie Baker, Attorney General Maura Healey, and the state legislature to employ all means available to ensure that Holtec commits to immediately withdraw any plans to dump any radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay. And that is a resolution that was also very similarly to that passed in Duxbury. We have not passed a resolution in town meeting, and I would strongly urge that we get one in October or late September, whenever the town meeting is. I hope it's not too late to start that initiative. It would just add to the power of all the towns who are on the same page. Now, June 14th, our Attorney General Maura Healey made one public statement. It's the only one we're aware of. Healey said, and this is from the CAI, the company that owns Pilgrim Holtec won't be allowed to discharge 1 million gallons of nuclear wastewater on her watch, either as Attorney General or if she's elected governor. We've come a long way on this issue, and I'll be damn sure in whatever capacity I serve that we're not going to have radioactive waste dumped down here. She believes the state has the authority to stop the discharge based on a settlement agreement with Holtec combined with state and federal law. And it is true. When Holtec signed the settlement agreement, they agreed to comply with all the laws of the Commonwealth and with the Marine Sanctuary Act. They made that commitment by signing the contract, and that was the end of the preemptive right of the NRC. However, the bad news is that Holtec has not withdrawn dumping and appears to consider this insignificant. So, now comes the budget bill. Our wonderful Senator Sue Moran proposed legislation after the failure of other legislative efforts, by the way, proposed legislation that would be an amendment to the economic development package. It is amendment number 63 for Senate 3018, and this amendment would put a temporary moratorium on Holtec's plan to discharge nuclear waste from Pilgrim. It would require a commission study the economic effects that said dumping would have on the local economy, including but not limited to the commercial fishing, real estate, and hospitality industries. The amendment would not abrogate, undermine, or preempt any federal law or federal agency rules. This economic study is well within the purview of state government. And this was a very clever amendment, and I'm happy to report that it was passed through the Senate on Friday. However, it is now with the committee that reconciles House and Senate versions. It is likely that this amendment and the budget bill will pass. The end of the legislative session is the last day of July, but after that, Charlie Baker has 10 days before he must sign or not sign the economic development, the budget. And that's a little worrisome because he has 10 days to go line by line through the budget, and if he wanted to cross out that line item, he could. I don't know why he would want to, but who knows? So here are unanswered questions. How, and this is really the big one, how will the Commonwealth enforce this amendment? Does Mass DPH have a plan to oversee and sample the water for radionuclides? I'm sorry to say that I asked that question last night, as did Mary Lambert, and the answer was no. They do not have a plan to oversee and sample the water for radionuclides. They have done some split sampling. It's not clear when. Jack Priest with the DPH told us that last night, but it was very vague, and it's never been shared, and we don't know. Does Mass DEP have a plan? Not a plant, a plan to oversee and sample chemicals? No. They are relying on Holtec, telling them, sharing their data, which to me feels like the fox watching the hen house. We haven't seen a lot of reasons to trust what Holtec says. But I can't remember what the last is. Is there one or two more? Yes, okay. What the select board can do is really communicate with Maura Healy any way you can do that. I have to tell you before going through this that we collectively and individually since April have been trying to wring a response out of the Attorney General, and we have failed. There has been no response whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. We've sent emails, we've sent letters, we've made phone calls, nothing. So this is very worrisome because we don't see a path to the enforcement. However, we need to bombard her with communications. She's busy running for governor, and this may explain why she is not attending to this issue right now, but time is very short. And Maura may not understand that they are going to announce their decision very, very soon. She may think that she has until December to deal with it, and in one case she would still be Attorney General, in another case she would be governor, but she may think she has time to deal with it. She doesn't. That's the problem. So if you can write a short letter, even the statement that you made, Betty, it does not have to be complicated. You don't have to invent the wheel. You don't even have to cite statistics that Mary and Jim Lappert have done so very thoroughly. But they do need to know that even 4 years ago, the blue economy of Massachusetts exceeded $500 million. And that is not an economy you want to mess around with. That is not an economic situation that you want to sabotage by allowing this travesty, because even the hint that Holtec is doing this has already had a chill effect on, for example, the real estate community and the shellfish community. Yeah.
So, Brad, could you, and Anthony, could you guys draft a letter and check with our special counsel? I'm sorry, Henrietta, we have a big group of people waiting here tonight, so we kind of have to move.
Yes. So there's just one last thing that I need to tell you. We couldn't show the video of it, but this was, oh, well, here's an excerpt from our letter to the AGO, but we can send that to you. What I want you to know is that last night at the meeting, Jim Lampert, and this was 8:40-ish in the evening, asked the Holtec representative, David Noyes, very directly, are you going to respect the EPA letter? And basically, Noyes said no. Yeah, and we do have the soundbite. Again, we can send it to you.
Please.
I think you really want to hear this.
Yes.
It's like 40 seconds. Yeah, it's very short, but it's very disturbing. And we have to do some pretty radical action to get the Attorney General's attention, because the key is with Maura Healy. That's all there is to it. Yeah.
I can play this. Yeah, that's fine. And Henrietta, don't worry, we love radical.
Yes.
So.
Her phone's on silent.
My question that I put to Dr. Singh, and I'm sure you've seen the question, I hope to get a clear answer, you may have gotten it, was, will Holtec agree that it will not release any of Pilgrim's waste into Cape Cod, Plymouth, Duxbury, or Kingston Bay, because those are clearly prohibited by the regulations with which, in the settlement agreement, you agreed to comply.
So the direct answer to your question is no. We will not say that we will not discharge water at the Plymouth Dock. That is still an option that remains on the table.
That's what we're dealing with.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're really preaching to the choir
Oh,
here,
I
because
know,
we're,
I know, but it's the reality that when push comes to shove, only if we can get Maura Healy on this will we succeed. Otherwise, they're dumping. It's a
well,
given.
the assistant town manager's right here, and our admin, and I think Mr. Mahoney has something that he wants to say.
And I'm sorry, when you're finished, I just have a couple of concluding remarks for us.
Oh, okay.
All right, through the chair. So, the State Handicap Committee, I guess I have the honor of chairing that committee, okay? I was absent last night.
We missed you.
Terribly.
I haven't followed up with the vice chair, Ms. Dubois. I will do that tomorrow, okay? So I got back into town today at about 4 o'clock. So you're making it sound like certain things have changed, and I'm going to verify that tomorrow. But Holtec has been clear. So if you look at the public hearing, I didn't attend it. I believe the chair and the vice chair did. That was out in the 1820 courtroom, I'd say a month or two ago. So when Dr. Singh zoomed in, he made it clear that they were going to follow the science on this one. So one of the members of NDCAP is Jack Priest, and he represents the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. So everything that I've heard up until less than 24 hours ago was that upon completion, they're still using this water for certain industrial applications on site. Upon completion of that, and once they determine they no longer have to use that water for any of the decommissioning tasks, that water will be sampled. That water will go to the Department of Public Health at the state level, and it'll be tested in state labs. So that's where the rubber really meets the road. Okay, so why that has changed, I'm going to verify this tomorrow. I don't think it has.
No, it hasn't really changed.
Okay, good. So that's the key to the whole thing. We get it. And then at that point in time, depending on what that testing says, and obviously it goes without say that none of us want this to go into the bay. But then the challenge is going to come down, Henrietta. It's going to come down to Maura Healy, and it's going to come down to 3 of your federal delegation, your 2 U.S. senators, and Bill Keating. That's the 4. Those are the 4 individuals that are going to impact this more than anyone else in New England.
I completely agree. Although the federal.
Excuse me, can you speak into the microphone, please? Thank you.
Yeah, yes, I agree. Go ahead.
So I just want to let you know, what are we in? This is late July. So we're in the, you're probably looking at September to Thanksgiving when something's going to happen. And that's the key to the whole thing. You got to get past that hurdle. They stop using the water on site, a sample is taken and sent up to the testing labs.
Therein lies another question. Who is taking the sample? Who is overseeing the taking of the sample? Who is choosing the independent sampler? Who is paying the independent sampler? Those are important questions, and that's where we.
I think some of those questions have been answered by the state representatives on the committee.
Not to our satisfaction.
Okay.
But that's another question.
So at this point in time.
Yeah, what we wanted you to know is about the EPA letter, about Dr. Singh's letter, about the resolutions that have been taken all over the Cape and in Duxbury, those kinds of things. Those are all developments since the May NDCAP. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So,
we have to wrap this up, so.
Yep, I'm not even gonna, I'm just gonna give you a quick overview. My perspective, joining Save Our Bay, I've been a Plymouth resident for 5 years. We moved down here from East Woburn. My husband and his family grew up in East Woburn, and they were very much a part of a civil action. Those were my husband's friends who were part of the childhood leukemia. My husband worked with his dad. His dad battled non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. One of the reasons why we left Woburn and moved down to Plymouth was my husband right now is disabled, retired. He was disabled, retired at the age of 51. Part of his disability is he needs a liver and a kidney transplant. They suspect that the exposure to the contaminants from the particulars with that case are a huge contributing factor to that. And you fast forward to that's all said and done, but here we are, and we're one of the lucky ones. My husband's dad survived the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and we're hopeful for my husband's situation right now. But coming down here and moving into Plymouth and finding out that this is an option that this company is putting on the table, you know, when this is all said and done, Holtec's going to leave and move on to the next situation. But how once that happens, you cannot undo that. You cannot unring a bell. And at this particular point, you've got to understand from the perspective that hindsight is 20/20, and I am bringing you that hindsight, that this is a situation that started back in the 70s in East Woburn, and I am personally still dealing with this today. And it cannot happen. And they will dump that water, and they will move on, because they do not care. But I care.
I understand completely. I worked there for 30 years,
Yep.
so I really know how much
Yeah.
they do not care.
Exactly.
I know what it's like to have to go up to the refuel floor, and you're not walking up there in
Right.
shorts and a
Right.
T-shirt. You're
Right.
suited up to get up there, so.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
know what it's all about, and I can guarantee you that this board will fight with every ounce of energy that we have to stop it.
Oh, and just like we are, and we're also starting to notice a slight uptick in the aggressiveness from Holtec too. I mean,
Yeah, that's very, that has changed since the letter, since Singh's letter to Markey. The tone
yes.
has
Well,
changed.
it hasn't changed for me. It's the same players,
Well, the
just
police were
different
called on
names.
us last night,
So,
the whole bit.
same
Yeah,
players, different
so,
names.
I don't
That's
know
all
what
it
I'm
is.
going to be getting from them, but, yep.
But-
So with that being said, hindsight is 20/20. This cannot happen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, so if you need any information, documents, or anything for the letter, it really is very important that every town makes the best case possible. You might cite statistics from Plymouth and Plymouth Industries, those would be powerful. Because economic development is one of Warren Healy's.
Can you speak in the microphone if you're going to be speaking?
Right, right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and now we are going to go through our committee appointments. I just want, I want to put on my glasses so I can see what I'm reading, is what I want to do. So I believe that Mr. Cohan has, yeah, go ahead.
Bill Cohan with the Community Preservation Committee. I initially put my name in to serve on this working group. I've seen the list of potential candidates, and I, if it's okay with the board, I'd like to withdraw my name as appointment to the working group. But what I would replace that with is that I'll make myself available as liaison from the Community Preservation Committee, because more appropriately, the Community Preservation Committee was the entity that funded the renovations, and I've been working closely with all the different groups that have worked with the building over a period of time, whether it's going to RFP or the building committee or the volunteer group. So I have a detailed knowledge of the building and its history in terms of its construction. So I'll make myself available, if it's the pleasure of the board, as a liaison from the Community Preservation Committee, but I'd respectfully withdraw my name as an appointment from this working group.
Great, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Cohan. And we also have a couple others that withdrew, and that was Maggie Glennon
Correct?
and Marlene McGrath,
Correct.
who, I don't know if she's still here,
And Joan Bartlett?
and Joan Bartlett. Okay. All right. So there are 7 full seats. There will be, the town manager will be the chairman. I'd actually volunteer to be the selectman liaison, as long as the board has no issue with that. And we will choose 7 seats. This is going to be a quick process. We're going to have a turnaround somewhere within 45 to 60 days of what the uses will be for that building. So, Harry?
Yeah, I just have a question in terms of that time frame. Why 2 months turnaround? It's likely that the findings of this group are most likely going to have some component that is going to run through town meeting, have to be run through town meeting, okay, to whatever they decide. And it's obviously not going to make the fall town meeting, because that warrant closes within 30 days. And the next warrant does not open until the end of October for the spring town meeting. So that's, August, September, October, and even into November, because I believe that the warrant closes on December the 21st for the spring 2023 meeting. So I was just kind of wondering why 60 days?
Why 60 days? Because we want to make a decision to see what the best use for that building will be. And then when we have to do, excuse me, when we have to go for funding and everything, that's a whole different process. We want the input of this committee to come back and say to the public, so we can get our information out there to the public to say, this working group worked together, and we believe that it's this, and this are the best uses for that building, and then turn it over to town staff to implement those uses, and whatever else goes along with it.
Okay, and that's fine, I understand that, but turning it over to town staff to implement it does not mean that town meeting will not need to approve that.
Well, it also does not mean that town meeting will have anything to approve. We don't know what the use is going to be.
Well,
Who doesn't?
Say, for instance, they decide that they're going to move the library into it.
Mm-hmm.
There are costs involved in moving a library. Town
Okay.
meeting has to approve that. I just don't, I'm not sure I understand why we need 60 days when that gives 60 days before, basically, so if it's August, September, then you have September, October. 60 days is 60, from now is 60 days, then 60 days to the warrant opening.
Well, I mean, there are, if we really wanted something for fall town meeting, we could certainly hold a place for fall town meeting, working either with CPC or as a selectman article. So I think the longer we wait, it just drags on everything else, and let's decide what we're going to do with it and then take it from there. It's kind of like, by not having it in place, it makes me feel like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. So let's figure out what it's going to be first before we move forward. Because who knows, maybe the group is going to turn around and say, sell it, or, put out an RFP, or, I mean, there are
Well, no.
so many options.
No, I agree with you. I'm just questioning why 60 days. It seems to me there's 30 more days to put in it, 90 days, and that gives them this group 30 more days to make an informed decision, because they're gonna have to take a look at the history of this place. They're gonna have to take a look at the original RFP that was produced and examine why the RFP was written the way that it was? Why was there a pilot agreement in there? They're going to have to examine the deliberations of why $4.5 million were approved, okay, which included the statement that the Symes House will never cost the taxpayers of Plymouth anything ever again. Okay, so if they're going to be revising that, which seems to me that they well could be doing, or even recommending selling it, it seems like 60 days when we actually have at least 30 days additional in there before the warrant even opens. It seems to me that saying 60 is, I just think the extra 30 days would matter. But that's just me, and you guys do what you want to do.
I could, all those things you just mentioned, I could do in a week and a half.
Well, great, Betty. Congratulations. I can't.
Go ahead.
I could probably come up with a compromise that, and an explanation of why it should be done quickly. I'm not sure it could be done in 60 days, but if it could, that would be great. And the reason for that is if you didn't see Brad's email today, we're getting requests for use of the building. And we really, at this time, there's no committee in there and there's no staff, so, to run the building. So I think we have to, the quicker the decision is made to see what they're going to do, the better. In the meantime, I think we should just suspend all activity which there really isn't any activity, but there's been a couple of requests, but I think you may have to just say it's suspended until further notice. You can say lack of staff. So, but I think that's part of the reason, Harry White. It'd be great if you could do it in 60 days, but if you can't, I would think the chairman can say we need a little more time, so I think that'd be a good compromise.
No, but I think that, okay, just as long as it's not written in stone that it's 60 days.
I think.
I
agree. It should be written in stone, but hopefully we can come up with a plan quickly to help everybody, so.
Mr. Quintal.
How about a compromise? How about not putting any days in there and have the group report back to us in 30 days, and if they need more time, they can ask for it then?
Perfect.
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So just to make this a little bit easier for all of us, we have everybody's letters. We've reviewed everything. So I know Mr. Quintal is going to tally the votes for us, correct?
I'd love to.
I know you would.
Is it?
Okay, there were some names in here where the materials that accompanied them gave me no idea who these people were or why they were even applying, other than they read the notification. And if they are available and waiting to speak, I'm thinking, for instance, Jonathan Morse.
I'm Jonathan Morse.
There he is, and he's been sitting here. I think we should run through these and see if any of them
Well, you
wanna
didn't let
speak.
me finish.
Oh, okay, all right.
And if any board members have any questions for these members, or if anyone here has something that they want to say, then we will allow that. So, okay.
But should we?
Well,
Let's go down
let's,
the list.
Let's start from the top.
we're going to go down the list. Alice Baker. Go ahead.
One moment, I'm connecting her as a panelist, so she will be able to speak.
Okay.
Alice, if you can unmute yourself, you will be able to speak.
Alice, unmute yourself.
You can unmute yourself by pressing the...
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Do you have anything to say, Alice?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair and board members for allowing me to speak. My name is Alice Baker. I am the chairman of the Minimet Village Steering Committee. I have been on the committee for 8 years and chairman 7 years. I am also on the parking committee, the White Horse Beach Parking Committee. And I have a vested interest in Minimet, in Plymouth, but mostly Minimet. I work very hard with residents on what goes on around here, and the Minimet Steering Committee has invested a lot into the Symes House in the past. I would love to be on this task force. I would love to work with members to come up with ideas on how to, generate revenue and to see what we can do to get the residents and, the best way to get, events going on. I think it's great if maybe we could even, do a satellite and whatnot. We have to listen to what the other members have to say too. But the Symes House is a very beautiful historic landmark. And it's extremely important that we keep the Symes House, but we need to get the activity in there. And in the last 5 years, I have not really seen anything going on much in there. I know the Minimet Steering Committee has been the only committee that used the meetings for the Minimet Steering Committee in the Symes House up until COVID. So I could go on and on and on. I don't want to do that. You folks know who I am. I have a strong interest in working here in Minimet, and I truly believe that I would be a good candidate to work with this task force. And I'm hoping that you would vote for me tonight. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mrs. Baker. So I'm going to let them all speak first then. All right, Anna Fish. Is she here or on? No. Ellen Carasolo?
She was here. She's not here right now.
Okay. Jeffrey Fiedler? No. Joseph Ventruska? No. Julie Gallant? No. Karen Bukes?
She's on the screen.
Okay.
Karen, if you can unmute yourself.
Here I am. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for considering me for a seat on this committee. I've been involved with Minimet Plymouth for many, many years. Started with the Symes House at its very beginning. As chair of Precinct 7, I held my caucuses there. I was also on 2 boards of the Symes House. I've seen the progress I would have liked to have seen, I did not see. But the thing I want you to know is that I want to work together with this board and the town to bring the best possible solution for that house to Plymouth. And it's long overdue. I'm honored to be even considered, and I thank you very much. I've served on many, many committees, too many to list right now, but this committee would mean a great deal to me, and I want to bring this to Plymouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bukes. Patricia Edelman?
Patricia, if you can unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for hearing me. I think I might have to withdraw because I am not available during the day, and when you said the town manager was going to lead this working force, I believe that would be during the daytime. So having that information, I will withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zuparoli? Sure.
Mr. Julie Gillespie.
I called
Good
him.
evening, and
Sure,
thank you
yeah.
for allowing me this opportunity. Good evening, thank you. And thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. You have my letter expressing my interest in the Symes House, and I just have a few additional comments to make. I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have after that. I think the Symes House presents a unique opportunity for the town of Plymouth and specifically Manomet Village. For some time, Manomet Village has needed a building that can serve multiple purposes, and with the acquisition of the Symes House, the town now has a unique opportunity literally on its doorstep. The Select Board made the right choice 2 weeks ago to take over the financial and administration of this building. To date, the Symes House has failed to generate the revenue that 2 of its previous administrations has attempted to do, and while the reasons for this failure are many, the fact remains that the town now has a building that needs a purpose. While the property has potential, the management fell short of accomplishing a number of goals that it set out for itself. CPC monies allowed for renovations, but the restoration of the building as a historical structure became moot when elevators and contemporary features were installed and other upgrades were made. This is a contemporary structure with a historic shell. $4.5 million has been spent on the house, and more will probably be needed. Money is scarce, and the town simply cannot absorb the financial burden of the building while relinquishing all administrative control. I have listened to the reasons as to why this has happened, and to me, many fall short. Marketing the building never really happened, and while COVID had an impact, other businesses and not-for-profits have regained some of the losses since 2020. What has happened with the Symes House? This is my question. As a member of the Advisory and Finance Committee, there are several questions that I need to ask. The open space in and around the building needs maintenance. The first and second floor have been vacant. However, the apartments on the third floor are still occupied. Affordable housing has been the only aspect that has lived up to the reasons for the infusion of money into the building. The 2 groups that have taken over the administration of the building have, in a word, dropped the ball. While I do enjoy a good preservation and community project, I think this project needs certain things accomplished. First of all, a complete structural and engineering analysis needs to be done to see what the building needs, what repairs are needed for a building that has sat almost idle for 2 years. Is the building up to code in all aspects? Are there extermination needs, since there have been reports of rodent infestations? And what, if anything, needs to be done to the grounds to make them more appealing? A thorough cost analysis needs to be completed, first answering the question of how much will all of this cost? Is there any potential revenue-generating possibilities for the building? And what will the utility and maintenance costs of the building be projected out over the next 5 years? What viable proposals are there for the use of this building? The possibilities include moving the Manomet branch of the Plymouth Public Library into the first floor. If this is done, engineers need to be engaged to attest to the first floor being able to withstand the weight of the books. This will provide community use of the building, allow for meetings, and for village events. There is an open space on which events can be held, much in the same way that events are held at the Plymouth Public Library here in town. Can the second floor be used as a satellite town hall, and yet the tenants will still remain? Can the building function as a satellite for the Center for Active Living? There are spaces for community rooms and meeting rooms on the first floor, with office space again on the second floor, and affordable housing still on the third floor. Our police department, for example, needs a technology center that will allow them a presence in South Plymouth. I also can talk about the need for a presence in North Plymouth, but that's for another time. These will support greater visibility for the police department in the community and increase public safety without incurring the cost of building a new precinct. This option would also support a satellite town hall as well, and would leave space for other municipal uses. The common denominator in all these scenarios keeps affordable housing on the third floor. However, these units need a second egress outside the building in the event of an emergency. None of these options, I believe, would harm the outward appearance of the building. That can be maintained, although it does need to be painted. Again, that's my opinion. Enough time has passed for this building. If the town is going to keep it, swift and decisive actions need to be taken. I would propose, I'm sorry, Mr. Helm, I would propose 3 meetings for this task force. I will compromise to 4. A review of the building, designating the cost and structural and engineering reports, 3 potential uses for the building, writing the report, revising the report, and reporting back to the board for the select board's decision. To waste any more time or money on this would simply be frivolous. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Mr. Zuparoli, does the board have any questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Sarah Jennings. No. Alan Hemberger. Go ahead. And just state your name for the record.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. I'm Alan Hemberger. I live at 30 Holmes Road, about 800 feet away from Sim's house. My house is like halfway between Sim's house and the bay. I wanted to make sure that someone from the neighborhood was tossing the hat in the ring on this. I'm going to withdraw my name for consideration for this thing, just because Jeff Fiedler and Aaron Ciruela have already put their names in, and I would hope you have someone from the neighborhood, those 2, take over for this. So I'm going to defer to those, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay. Jonathan Morse.
I will tell you, I'm going to withdraw my name because I do work during the day now, so. That's all. Hello, my name is Jonathan Morse. I'm going to have to withdraw my application due to the fact that I work during the day. I didn't realize we had a day meeting. I thought it was going to be a night type task force, but since it isn't, I have to withdraw. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Is it day meeting?
If he's chairman.
Sure.
John.
Yeah, if you just could, so I know that it's been suggested that this would be a day meeting. I think that a lot of the folks that applied would probably prefer, but I know that there's some that would prefer evening. So, I mean, in most course of action with newly formed committees, the first thing we do is just try to find the best time of day and what day that we can meet. So I guess I wouldn't say it's off the table that we're going to not have night meetings, but I do think that we would want to try to find a time that would work best for everybody.
Okay, I know that one woman withdrew because of the daytime meetings, but, so I don't know what's.
I would say that's yet to be determined at this time.
So,
I'm going to withdraw my name anyway, so thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay. Stephen Cole.
He's on vacation.
Okay. Margaret McSherry. I believe she. Gail Butler.
Unlike a realtor. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gail Butler, and I'm interested in serving on the House Task Force. A little bit about me. I have served for 4 years on the Advisory and Finance Committee and 2 years on the Capital Improvement Committee here in Plymouth. I worked as a real estate broker for over 30 years in the western part of the state. In so doing, my biggest job was to anticipate problems and solving them before they became a problem. My second biggest job was finding solutions to problems as they appeared. If you weren't good at solving problems, you were not going to make any money in real estate, because like any sales job, you only get paid when you consummate the sale. I love old homes and their stories. I was surprised at just how much history the Symes house has. In 1797, title search shows the first owner. In 1855, a gentleman's farmer conveyed a dwelling, a barn, livestock, and carriage with approximately 80 acres extending from the village to the coastline. By 1863, Symes built what appears to be the present home, along with several outbuildings, a large barn, and a second Empire-style farmhouse. What will the new chapter for the Symes house be? Can it be just one thing, or will it need to have a variety of uses? It's going to take time thinking outside the box, looking by someone who has time and desire to work on it. I think a task force can get a list of prospective alternatives and go through them one by one and come back to the board in, sorry, Harry, a month's time to present their best ideas and see if one or any work. Depending on the outcome, a new direction may be in order. Thank you. Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Will Shane?
Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity to present my candidacy.
Anthony, yeah.
It's on now, okay. I bring a particular set of skills and a certain history with the Sims house, and I would underscore that having met the descendants of the Sims family, I can assure you that it's pronounced Sims, not Symes. They were very adamant about that. Victoria Sims Poole, who passed away several years ago, was the great-granddaughter of Joseph Sims, and she chastised my wife and I when we were sitting in her living room about that pronunciation of the name. My expertise is, I have a private company of my own. I'm a coach, consultant, and business advisor to small businesses in southeastern Massachusetts. I make my own hours, so working during the day or in the evening is inconsequential to me. I'll simply schedule it. I also currently serve as the trustee and secretary for the Board of Trustees for Cape Cod Community College. I was integral and part of the team that brought the Aviation Maintenance Technology Program to Plymouth Airport. I'm currently serving as president of the Taking People Places organization, TPP, which began as a group of volunteers. We've recently received recognition from the Commonwealth as a nonprofit. We're still waiting for our 501c3 to hit, but this is the year that we're going to post 10,000 rides for the disabled and elderly in Greater Plymouth, serving individuals that require means to get to work and don't have dependable transportation, to opioid-addicted individuals that need to get to and have a dependable way to get to their treatment facilities. But that is a group that is taking off, and I'm very proud that I started as a facilitator for that meeting, and I was elected president in the last year. I am also chair of the board of directors for the Cape Cod Canal Region Chamber of Commerce, where I have an active amount of candidates in that area. I'm also the chair of the Cape Cod Canal Day Festival, which occurs every September. That expertise brings a talent base that involves in strategic planning, but it also involves execution and working with people. I work on numerous committees. I'm an excellent facilitator, and my history with the Sims House is known to many. We didn't push it across the finish line in the very first endeavor, but we did, in fact, stabilize the house. I know structurally what it looks like. I know I suspect what it needs now, and quite frankly, having been and remaining a member of the Sims House Foundation since we founded it in 2010, I remain active in maintaining St. Catherine's Chapel Park in Whitehorse Beach, And if need be, I'll get out in the front of the Sims house and mow it myself, just as I cut down trees, clear property. Every weekend, I'm down at the park. So while I'm by some noted, a West Manomet person living in just 2 miles outside of town, my wife and I are active members supporting the Manomet community in that park, which I think is a prime example of what volunteers can do when they put their minds to it. So with that in mind, I would ask for your consideration. I've provided the board as well as town manager with my resume and also a cover letter explaining why I think I would like to participate. This is my working retirement. I have a for-profit business. I'm active in 4 nonprofits. I'd very much like to see the Sims House maintained. I'll keep an open mind, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Connor Ryan? No. Tamara Giard? Victoria Costa? No. Monica Mullen? No. Okay. We will now start the voting process. Remember, folks, we have 7 votes. All those in favor of Alice Baker? Unanimous? All those in favor of Anna Fish? None? All those in favor of Ellen Gerosolo? None? Now Jeffrey Fiedler and Joseph Ventresca, they've withdrawn?
They did not withdraw.
No.
No.
Okay. Jeffrey Fiedler? One. Joseph Ventresca? None. Julie Galan? 4. Karen Bukes? 4. Robert Zuccaroli? 5. Sarah Jennings? No. Alan Hemberger?
No, withdrew.
Oh, withdrew, I'm sorry.
Stephen Cole's the next one.
Stephen Cole?
5.
5. Gail Butler? 1.
Did you skip over Margaret Masheri?
I think Margaret. Okay. I thought she withdrew.
No.
Margaret Masheri? Gail Butler? 2. Will Shane? 0. Connor Ryan? 0. Tamara Giard? 0. Victoria Costa? 3. And Monica Mullen? 5.
And my 7th vote is Bill Cohen.
He withdrew.
I put it in anyway.
Okay.
I was hoping to consider.
So who do we have, Dick?
Sorry. Julie Gallant, Karen Bukes, Robert Superoli, Stephen Cole, Victoria Costa, and Monica Mullen.
Great. Thank you, thank you, everyone. And Derek, will you be getting in touch with them?
Yeah, I'll be reaching out to each one of them.
Perfect, thank you.
Probably set up a meeting next week, early next week.
Okay. Just so folks know,
It was an error on the part of, between
I
the,
always do it, that's how they have
yeah.
to do it, yeah.
okay, now the town manager's report?
Sure. So, as you can imagine, and if you follow the news, you would have realized we had a very active and busy weekend this past weekend. And it started with some really strong preparation by our fire department and our emergency management division, who was working alongside of our assistant town manager last week. As we started to experience the heat wave, they pulled together a plan to ensure that our most vulnerable populations were cared for during the heat wave throughout the weekend. So they pulled together a cooling center plan, which allowed our library to act as a cooling center on Saturday, and then we reopened the Center for Active Living on Sunday. And part of that plan, the chief was able to secure free transportation for any of the individuals that needed relief during the hot hours of the weekend. So I start that as a backdrop to the preparation that unfolded as we head into last weekend. That preparation, bear witness, when on Friday afternoon or Friday evening, when the first of two fires took place, two structured fires, and that was at Thompson Circle. That the building was fully engulfed. Unfortunately, the family lost their home, but I was happy to report that there were no injuries, both in the family members that lived in the home, but the firefighters as well. And part of the reason why there was no injuries to our fire department was because, again, the preparation by our fire chief, who had already secured our rehab trailer and had added additional staffing that allowed for a more regular rotation of firefighters to fight these fires. And I don't know if you had the opportunity to notice that there were other fires, not in Plymouth, but in other communities where some firefighters actually had to be transported to the hospital because of heat exhaustion. Fighting the fire in this extreme heat became difficult. But again, we didn't have that experience, again, because of the preparation by Chief Foley and his team. So we lost that one, unfortunately, that home on Thompson Circle, and then we lost another one early Sunday morning on Overlook Drive. Again, fortunately, that there were no injuries, both to the family members and to the fire department itself. So those fires, by the time our fire apparatus had arrived, again, the buildings were fully engulfed, and they employed a strategy called surround and drown, where the firefighters just surrounded the building and just doused it just to put the fire out to preserve the properties in the surrounding area. So again, I appreciate the work of the fire chief, his department, and the firefighters who actually had to bear those difficult conditions. But I also want to just bring up the fact that we've had 17 fires in 7 days here in Plymouth. 2 of those were structure fires, as I reported. I'll talk about the third one in a minute. But the other ones, the other 14 or thereabouts, they were just local brush fires. And the reason why we're starting to see so many brush fires is because of the extreme dry conditions, to the fact that, like, even mulch is igniting. So like Mahoney and I were talking about one fire that there was a lawnmower hit a rock, a spark caused a fire in dry grass. So these are the conditions that we're experiencing. The fire department is out there, through public messaging, working PSAs, trying to educate folks on what they need to do to try to prevent future fires. And the last fire just happened yesterday morning, which you may have heard, over at the Captain John, about 2 miles out. The harbor master received a call that there was, the motor was on fire on the Captain John. There were 54 passengers that were going on a fishing excursion that had to be brought back. So we had the Coast Guard over at Minimum Point at the time, working with the harbor master, working on our whale situation. I'll talk about that in a minute. And they were able to redeploy assets up to again, 2 miles out of the harbor. They towed the boat back into the harbor. The fireboat was on scene. The fireboat actually went out as well to assist the harbor master at the time. So again, strong team effort. Coast Guard was there. Fireboat was there. Harbor master was there. They brought the boat back. No injuries. No one had to be transported to the hospital. So again, strong work, interagency response to that fire as well. And then what gained national attention was what's going on over at White Horse Beach area, Minimum Point with the whales. I think we have 2 whales that have been sighted in that area. There's been a lot of attention on Facebook. I talk about this today because I know a lot of people are excited to see the whales, but the general public is worried about the whale safety. And so the harbor master has been meeting on a regular basis with the U.S. Coast Guard, NOAA, Mass Environmental Police, and others, local nonprofits that really want to protect whales and dolphins, to try to really educate the public on a couple different fronts. So first front is what boaters need to be aware of, like the distance they need to keep away from the whales to keep the whales safe. And we've been trying to do that. Anthony's been working with the Harbor Master's Office on issuing PSAs, working with state officials on issuing those so folks understand what the rules of engagement are around these whales and how to keep them safe. And the other piece of this is what are our left and right limits as far as law enforcement. So I think the general public, they seem to believe that, we can, the harbor master and Coast Guard can push boaters away from the whales, but 90% of these boaters are actually fishing, and so they have a right to be there. At the highest point, we had about 200 boats on the water at one point, and 90% of those were fishing at the time. So there's not much that the Coast Guard can do unless a boater is harassing the whales, so chasing them down. So, and that's what they're out there patrolling. But just trying to educate the boaters as to what the distance, the 100-yard distance they should maintain if the whale goes under and comes up around them, to shut the motor off so that they don't injure the animal. So we're really focusing on the education piece at this point, and as of this morning, they think it's working. We're actually handing out pamphlets at the boat ramp as folks, prior to getting the water, we're giving them information so they knew what the rules of engagement were if they were to come across a whale. So again, another strong interagency collaboration. And then I just wanted to just bring up to you another item that is gaining national attention around monkeypox. So you probably have heard on the news that there are some CDC experts that are predicting this could potentially be the next pandemic. So our Board of Health office has weekly meetings with Massachusetts Department of Public Health. So just some data in Massachusetts. We have 49 cases of monkeypox in Massachusetts. None of them are in Plymouth at this time. And then of those 49 cases, there have been no deaths reported. So we'll continue to track trends and be mindful of any potential cases here in the community, but we'll be pushing some information as well as what people can do to try to prevent transmission or contraction of monkeypox. And the last thing I just wanted to remind folks, especially those in the community, that the warrant is currently opened and it closes on August 12th. So folks who have citizens petitions, they have until August 12th to submit those. Pending any questions, that's all I have for this evening.
Derek, on the whales subject, can you please have the harbor master, I'm not sure if they can enforce this, but at least add this. It's federal law that within 1/2 mile of a whale, and you should assume, since there are 2 to 3 whales at White Horse Beach, that as you're approaching Whitehorse Beach, your speed should be maximum 7 knots. And I can tell you from my deck this morning at 6:30, boats were coming in much faster than 7 knots. I'm sure it's because they're not aware of it, but could you have the harbor master add that to his advice to people? Is come in slow.
Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the things we seem to have missed on the agenda, Anthony, if you could add it from this point forward, we have a section that's selectmen comments and old new business. So I'm going to add that now as we speak, if there are any selectmen comments or old new business.
Yes,
Charlie?
Yes. I'm sure everybody knows that there were some serious issues this weekend at the beaches. I've seen the pictures. I'm sure everybody's gotten them. And I'm sure it's because of the high heat that made, that overcrowded the beaches. Especially Morton Park had some real issues. And I know I talked to Barry. I'm sure he talked to you guys. Barry's very concerned about the security, especially after that slashing in Carver at College Point. It was at the Carver side of it. That employee got slashed, not seriously, but he's very concerned. There's kids at Morton Park, young kids. So I don't know if the chief can do anything about that, at least temporarily, or especially when there's a high heat like that, it's going to be a big day. He had mentioned that they used to have Whitehorse has 4 police, I believe, Betty?
Yes.
And they took the police off of Morton and put them down there, I think. Is that true? Or,
No, Whitehorse doesn't have 4, they have 2.
well, they only have 2 now, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's concerned, and I'm concerned too, because the young kids stopping, on a road, telling people they can't come down there. It's kind of dangerous. So that's an issue that should be addressed, and I'm sure Dana's aware of it. The other issue is at Fresh Pond, and I saw pictures of that too. It was rowdy behavior, loud noise. The trash was unbelievable, how filthy it was. I saw the pictures of it on Monday morning. So, and again, I'm hoping it's just because of it was such a hot weekend, and some of the beaches got closed off and they had nowhere else to go. But something I think we have to keep an eye on. We talked about it in the Beaches and Pond meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So those 2 areas, they tell me Whitehorse Beach was good.
Mm-hmm.
So those 2 areas I think we should address as soon as possible.
If I could.
And the last thing I have is the crosswalk at Avenue A. That's all. That's the last thing I'm.
If I could respond to all 3 of your comments,
Yes, sir.
if you don't mind. So crosswalk at Avenue A, there will be a recommendation that comes to the board at the next meeting to install crosswalk, so we just need the board's approval for that. The trash and litter at Fresh Pond was a conversation at our staff meeting this morning. Mr. de Blasio brought it up. We've been assured by the DPW director that they will increase staffing to make sure that, again, I would say all of our beaches and ponds were overwhelmed this past weekend, which really contributed to the high volume of trash. So we're going to increase the staffing levels to ensure that we're cleaning that up as soon as we can and throughout the weekend. The issue around Morton Park, and especially coming off what happened at the Miles Standard State Park, I think we all agree with you, Selectman Blitzer, that we need to make sure that our employees are safe, they're not being harassed, and they're able to do their job appropriately. And so for that reason, we met with Mr. de Blasio, the police chief, and his command staff this morning for 90 minutes to discuss this very issue. We've come up with a short-term plan to redeploy assets over to Morton Park, police assets, so that we can provide a safe and secure environment. This is going to be the short-term plan to get us through the summer. We've already committed to working with Mr. Malaguti's committee around some long-term strategies, working with the residents around Morton Park and Fresh Pond.
That's good. And this weekend, if it's real hot, I'm only right up the street. I'm a half mile, I might swing down a couple times just to see it for myself firsthand. But in Fresh Pond, I get friends that are down there, but I got an email from somebody that he's never seen it like that. He's very concerned, so that's great, Derek.
And one thing I would remind any of your constituents that call you and complain about loud noise or litter, especially the loud noise and the nuisance that's coming from some of the behavior at some of these ponds, call the police department. The police department will respond
Well, I just got it.
100% of the time.
My response was, I'm going to bring it up at the select board meeting. I'll bring it to the attention. And I happen to see Barry. And we talked about, the issues, so I knew he was going to be with you. So.
Yeah, and we've educated the Morton Park residents that if you see some inappropriate behavior, just call the police department. They are there, they're ready to respond, and they respond 100% of the time. Thank you.
Just to kind of go on Charlie's thing, and you and I, Derek, have had that discussion this week. The loud radios on, like, in the beaches and ponds, I was down there, all week. It was unbelievable that, these people this is their homes, whether they're on a beach, surrounding a pond, whatever. And I think it's just gotten to the point that we have to do something to protect our residents and the pleasure that they deserve from their homes. And I think it's time that we had some kind of ban on music, because there was somebody on Whitehorse Beach with a gas generator plugged in to a speaker with a radio. I was like, can't have gas like that on the beach. So, but it doesn't seem like they have any, respect for the people that live in that area. So, and I know Morton Park is a big thing like that, and so is Fresh Pond. And I know someone who lives right on the pond, and I got, emails about that as well. So, it's getting to the point where my priority and the town's priority should be protecting our residents. And if that says that we're going to have to make some drastic changes for our residents with access to these ponds and beaches, then it's something that we have to address, and I know it's late in the season already, but something that come September, we need to move forward with the plan so we have something in place for next year, because it just, me personally, if you have a radio on the beach, you're missing the point. So,
Well, being in music is a little harsh, so.
Well, it isn't harsh when you're a resident and you
Yeah, but
have
if
to
it's at
sit.
the right, if it's at the right volume,
I would say loud music is one of the primary complaints at Morton.
Yeah.
And, the park attendants, they go over there, they ask them to turn the music down. Some people will comply, but they would say probably at least 50% of them don't comply.
Yeah, unless it's a police officer, then they don't
Right.
they're not respecting these kids. And the kids, as a parent, I wouldn't want my young kid, having the responsibility of doing that. because
And I'm not
it's dangerous.
saying for police to go up there, but if there's some kind of policy in place that there's no radios on the beach or pond
Well,
that abuts residential property, then it's a rule.
well, if it's the biggest complaint, I guess we'd have to take a look at that, but I hope it doesn't have to come to that, but anyway.
Did you have something, Harry?
Yeah, I have some new business.
Okay.
A piece of new business. And this is, well, maybe it's old business. It's about the racetrack, the thoroughbred horse racetrack. As all of us are probably aware, there was an article, WATD, and Derek, we received a letter from Loring Tripp, the Director of Planning and Community Development for Boston South. On behalf of Boston South, I am pleased to announce, we received this on July 22nd, I'm pleased to announce that our initial agreement was officially signed on Thursday, July 21st, 2022, marking the official commencement of our first 90-day due diligence period. Following this due diligence period, we will reach out with an update, etc. In the WATD article concerning this, County Commissioner Jared Valenzola stated, and I quote, "A thoroughbred horse track is on the table as a potential use." So it's pretty clear that Boston South is, at this point, ignoring, and they certainly have a right to ignore it, during their due diligence phase. They are ignoring the referendum, and they are ignoring the fact that there is a letter on file with the Gaming Commission saying, voicing the disapproval, and the not acceptance of this concept for the town of Plymouth. And they're in their due diligence period, and I would like to request that we begin a due diligence period. And I would like to request through the chairman that our town manager, Mr. Brindisi, call a meeting of our town council and our state legislative delegation, including Senator Moran, Representatives Moratori and Lenatra, and I will be in attendance. Would you check with our council to see if the entire board can be in attendance? I think there are a number of legal questions that have been bandied about with no real answer. If you talk to a different lawyer, you might get a different response, one being, can the county build a racetrack on county land? There are many people who think that they cannot. There are many people who actually, lawyers that I've talked to, think that they can. Also, the whole thing about whether town meeting can prevent it if they try to move forward by not voting for a zoning change. Clearly, the county, Plymouth, the county of Plymouth County does not agree with that. So I would like the council to talk to us about that. The reason for the presence of our legislative delegation is that I know that the State Gaming Commission, particularly the Racing Commission, is in the process of changing or suggesting changes to the statute. Okay, and I'm concerned about some of the changes that they're proposing. And that's why I would like to discuss that with our legislative delegation.
John?
Harry, no disrespect, but if you make a motion, I'm going to vote against that, and I'll tell you why. I said it before. In fact, the chairman of the county said the same thing. He's not going to spend a penny talking to lawyers or anything. And I don't want the town, I don't want to waste any more time on this issue and any money. I don't want to spend a penny. Let that group spend the next couple of years doing their due diligence, spending their millions of dollars, and then come back to us with what they can and can't do. And then if we're against it, we vote against it. But I don't want to spend another penny on this supposed horse race proposal. It's a waste of money, okay? It's not going to happen as far as I'm concerned. As long as I'm on this board, I'll be against it. And if we don't okay, they're not going to get a license. So I don't want to waste another minute or another penny on the horse race. That's my feeling on that. So I'm against the town manager getting involved and especially getting our council involved. It costs us money.
May I?
So that's my feeling.
So that would be great if they were saying that it is our decision, but they're saying that it isn't.
And Charlie, just FYI, the State Gaming Commission, the racing division, is attempting to change the statutes that we are playing with. They change the statutes, we could be screwed. I don't think waiting until after, because they're in the process of finalizing their statute changes. I think waiting to discuss that, for instance, with our state legislative development until after they are at the State House, I think is a mistake. And I'm not talking about spending a ton of money. I'm not talking about litigating. I'm not with the council. I'm talking about talking to having the council come in and advise us on their opinion about whether or not the county is correct, as Betty has pointed out. If it would be, I would agree with you completely if they weren't clearly ignoring the referendum and our letter, okay? They're ignoring it because they think they can change it or they can change our minds, okay? The county has already said that they do not agree with either of the two things about county land being used for a racetrack as problematic, and that town meeting has any say in zoning when it comes to county land. They've already said that. So if we don't prepare ourselves, we're going to face this suddenly, literally, in many ways, out of the blue, and we're going to be behind the 8 ball because we will have not done our due diligence.
I read the, Steve Bulletin had the legal wording on the licensing, and if, without the local okay from either council or from select board, that they will not be issued a license.
That is Charlie, that's the current statute.
Right.
They're in the process of examining and revising all of the state statutes around racetracks. And I just remind you.
At that point, we can get an opinion. But right now, let them spend their money, and the county's doing the same thing. The county's not talking to council. The county's letting them spend their money and do their due diligence. That's their job. And then come back. And if it's a problem, we're all against it. We're on the record of being against it.
And then.
Whoops, we're too late.
Oops, we're too late, Charlie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have.
It's a wonderful thing to be able to say, and I'm sure they were saying it on the Titanic, I knew it would fail. I knew that it would sink. I'm sure there were people saying that as it was going down. And I just think we have the opportunity to do some due diligence, and it doesn't cost anything to sit down with our legislative representatives, not a cent, and it's not going to cost that much. I'm not talking about bringing in our counsel to start litigation before litigation is necessary. It's so that we know, because there is a divergence of opinion among our residents, depending on who they're listening to, that the county can put it on the county land, and there's a whole group of people who are saying no, they can't.
And they're the same people that said that we all voted for a racetrack. Okay, it's the same people. So, like I said, Harry, you do what you want to do, but I'm against getting council involved right now.
Okay, Betty, do we need to make a motion to have this done?
Yes.
Or I make a motion that Derek set up this meeting, okay, and check with council to see if the entire board can attend. So I make that motion.
Is there a second? I'll second for discussion. Mr.
Yeah, I'm not going to support this at this time. I agree with Charlie, and I can't set my watch by WATD. That's how a lot of the turmoil in this community starts. And I'm being totally honest about it. Yes, it's in the RFP to look at every possible thing. This is what I'm being told. And racetrack is one of those things. And I don't think they're going to pursue that, but it is in the RFP, and they will look at it. And I say if you're worried about changing legislation, then let our legislators know that if that starts to happen, to let us know immediately. Otherwise, we're wasting time and money.
Well, I actually disagree. And the reason why I disagree is because the town manager and I had a meeting with Boston South, and they told us that they were going to provide us a letter that said that they would not pursue a racetrack. And that was 8 weeks ago. And it's been complete radio silence since that meeting. So I think that we should be proactive. I think that we should have all of our ducks in a row, because if they turn around and they say we're putting a racetrack on there, then it's going to be one hell of a fight. So I don't think it's going to hurt anything. I don't think it's going to cost a lot of money. I think getting people at the table, you know what? Bring the commissioners in. I'd love to chat with them. So
I agree. I think we should do that.
I have you.
What's that?
You're against it, so. Right.
Well, but we don't know that. We don't know, I mean, we don't know that
Wait.
officially.
The county commissioners are against the racetrack. Is that what you're saying? The county commissioners are against it? Okay,
I'm not speaking for them right now, so.
okay.
I'm just telling you, I'm very confident there's not going to be a racetrack. I don't want to spend money.
John?
So I think that when Boston South doesn't come out and sign a document saying they're going to eliminate that option, it's kind of similar to what Holtec is doing. Holtec is looking at this strictly from a financial perspective. They're not ruling anything out until those lab results come in from the state. And Boston South, I think it's highly unlikely that they come back with a horse track. It's a small probability. They're coming back with something. 2 to 4 years from now, they are coming back with something. Now, I would bet against, a horse track proposal, but it's going to be something. Having said that, I don't understand why the question can't be answered just through a quick phone call from the town manager to Boston, to town council. I just don't know why it has to get to this level of involvement of numerous people. Is this not a simple getting one of our, lawyers on the phone up there in Boston and just asking them this over the phone, or am I oversimplifying this?
Well, I would defer to Selectman Helm to answer his intention to have a meeting, group think meeting with state delegation and council. But, there's always different courses of action we could take, and, we could send them a series of questions via email. But, I'll defer to the board. We worked for the pleasure of the board, so you let us know what you want us to do, and we'll do it.
And then the other part of that would be, could the chair, is it an oversimplification also for the chair to reach out to Senator Moran or Rep. Lenatra or Muratorian to say, does the potential exist for this to be changed, and all of a sudden, this is facilitating what they want to do with respect to a horse track?
Well, I think at this point, and I don't have a problem doing that, but maybe an official letter to our delegation. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with meeting with an attorney, asking specific questions. And because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not trusting anybody right now that has anything to do with this little county horse track, because you know what? You and I have been sitting, waiting for that letter for over 2 months. And they went rogue. So I really don't care how they feel about it. I know how I feel about it. I know how the board feels about it. But I'm not putting my trust in them. I don't believe they'll do it. Because you know what? I believe they were going to send us a letter. And that didn't happen. So I don't have a problem. I mean, whether it's an executive session, however it has to be, that we are able to have these discussions is fine. And like I said, bring on the commissioners. I got a million questions for them. I'd like to know if that land was surplused before they leased it. How does that happen with county land? Did they have to surplus that land before they were able to lease it? I'd like the answer to that question. Because if it was, Plymouth has first right of refusal for that property. I'd like that answered. So, myself, I don't know. I'm not as nice as you are, Mr. Quinto.
I hear about the state delegation. The state delegation has been at numerous meetings and at table. So,
Right.
sending them a letter like, hello, wake up, they know what's going on.
I know.
They've been at many of the meetings that I've been at. So, that's another reason I'm out.
And excuse me, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, and I agree with Dickie. They know how we feel, okay? And again, I'm against the horse race. I'm sick of talking about it. I saw the ATD article. I saw some comments on Facebook. Here we go again. And I don't want
Stir the
to,
pot.
I don't even want to talk about it, and I don't want to spend a dime. Let them spend millions of dollars on the due diligence and find out that they can't do a racetrack. But I'm against spending any money or any time on it right now.
But
at this
what
moment.
if the statutes change, that they'll be able to do it?
I believe, as Dickey said, the state delegation will tell us that that's starting to happen. And then, at that point, we can take some action.
I don't like to react. But anyway, well, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of having, go ahead, do you want to say something?
I'm voting.
Oh.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Does not pass, so. Okay. We're on to, is there any more old new business? John?
Derek, so you currently sit in the hot seat, and it's not an easy job. And I've been here, you're the fourth town manager I've served with, and I just wanted to, your predecessor's time with the community is coming to an end, I believe, this Friday. You're talking about almost a 20-year run. The job is not easy. Somebody told me years ago that this town gives their town manager a lot of tennis balls to keep in the air at the same time. It's not easy. I could never do what you do, so anyhow, almost 2 decades. I just wanted to thank her for her, service to the community and wish her all the best in all her future endeavors.
I'll say I agree with you, John, on that. She did a very good job here. And, I worked with her many years. I didn't write them down. I don't know how many, a lot of years. And she did a very good job. So I wish her the best and her family, her and Brian and Mommy and her sister, right? Wish them all well and, success. And there's no question about her if she carries on something else, that she'll be doing something else. And I'd be more than happy to give her a good recommendation wherever, if I was called upon to do so. So.
John, thank you for reminding us about that. I forgot. So, yeah, Melissa, 17 years of service. She deserves to go out. She's got hopefully a nice package of leaving, and she's happy. And I wish her well in the future. She's still young enough if she wants to continue her career, and I wish her and Brian well, and I hope she sticks around Plymouth. So, anyway, congratulations, Melissa.
She's going to have way more fun retired than she was with us. Anybody, anything else? Nope. All right, we have licenses and administrative notes. Unless there are questions, I'd like to move them as 2 separate groups. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Discussion. Oh, discussion? All those in favor? Okay, an administrative note. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Mrs. Cavaco, I think this administrative note should be read into the record.
The administrative note reads, "The board will vote to approve and execute the SEIU Local 888 contract for fiscal year 2022 through fiscal year 2024.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. And now a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Everyone have a great week. I do not know if we are meeting next week.
We have two hearings scheduled for next Tuesday,
Guess that answers that.
I guess we are meeting next week.
unless we just did admin notes. but we have to do the 2 hearings.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Thank you.